Chapter 807. The court assembly dispersed quickly. However, everyone's expression was a little different. Qin Shujian only mentioned the heavenly rule during the court assembly and didn't talk much about it. However, everyone could understand. Since the heavenly rule had come out, it would be implemented in the end. The difference was, it was just a matter of time. When the gods left, Qin Shujian sat on the throne and reviewed the matters of the court assembly. The heavenly rule has to be set. After all, without the heavenly rule, the binding force of the heavenly court won't be enough. There was a heavenly rule in the third era, but it's not appropriate to copy it. There are some things that have to be changed. Then, I'll combine the opinions of others and formulate a heavenly rule that's suitable for this era. Qin Shujian had some thoughts in his mind. It wasn't the first time he was the Emperor of Heaven, so he was no stranger to the heavenly rule. As early as the third era, the heavenly rule existed. However, the heavenly rule of that era was different from the current era. Strictly speaking, there were no races fighting for supremacy in the third era. The human race was the dominant race, and the other races were either destroyed or struggling at death's door. It could be said that, except for the human race, which was orthodox, the other races were all crooked. Therefore, there was also a heavenly rule in the third era, which was that humans and demons were not allowed to fall in love, or immortals were not allowed to fall in love with other races. However, there was no problem with this heavenly rule in the third era, but if it appeared in this era, Qin Shujian was sure that it would definitely cause a huge uproar. This was because in this era, the human race was only one of the races. In fact, there were simply too many races in the great wide world. If the heavenly rule had this, it would basically be cutting off one's own path of retreat. Even if Qin Shujian was the Emperor of Heaven, he couldn't suppress this influence. As a result, it was necessary to screen and screen. While thinking about this, Qin Shujian said to the Godslayer, "Was there a heavenly rule in the ancient heavenly court? Or is this how the ancient heavenly court maintained the order of the heavenly court?" The ancient heavenly court didn't have a heavenly rule. Maintaining order basically relied on the Emperor of Heaven's strength. Anyway, with the ancient Emperor of Heaven holding the fort, no one would dare to cause any trouble. The god-slaying saber replied indifferently. Heavenly rules and whatnot were of little use to him. They were not as useful as actual strength. No matter how many rules there were, without enough strength to support them, no one would abide by them. On the contrary, as long as one was strong enough, even if there were no rules, no one would dare to disobey. Hearing this, Qin Shujian's mouth twitched slightly. It turned out that the ancient heavenly court did not have the existence of the heavenly Tao, and was suppressed by the Emperor of Heaven alone. In other words, if the Emperor of Heaven were to fall, the ancient heavenly court would definitely collapse. Of course, the ancient heavenly court had indeed collapsed. But that was because of the influence of the demon abyss, and not because of other aspects. However, Qin Shujian was certain that even if there was no demon abyss, as long as the ancient Emperor of Heaven did not break through to the Tao fruit realm, the ancient heavenly court would definitely not last for tens of thousands of years. Strength. Rules. None of them could be missing. If there were no rules for others to abide by, there would not be any problems in the short term if they forcibly suppressed with strength. But as time passed, there would definitely be trouble. Qin Shujian originally planned to inquire about the ancient heavenly court from Godslayer and find a way to perfect the heavenly rule. But now it seemed that there was no need to think about it. Just as he was about to think about the heavenly rule, his expression suddenly froze. At the same time, in a remote hall, a tyrannical aura rose. But as soon as the aura rose, it disappeared in an instant, as if it had never appeared. In the hall, a green ox transformed into a human and walked out. It happened to be daytime now, and the hot rays of the sun scattered in the heavenly court. When Nyo Dali walked out, the sunlight poured down, and the warm aura made a faint smile on his face. "I've finally broken through. Counting carefully, I've been in seclusion for quite a long time." This breakthrough allowed him to directly enter the 7th immortal realm from the 6th immortal realm. Although it was only a small breakthrough, It was the difference between the middle 3 immortal realm and the upper 3 immortal realm. He had broken through to this stage. Although Nyodali's strength was still a long way from fully recovering, at least he had a little foundation. However, the smile on his face did not last long, and it had already disappeared. Nyodali turned his head to look at another hall. You're one step ahead of me, but it doesn't matter. I've already broken through to the 7th immortal realm, and the gap between us is completely even. Let's see how you can catch up in the future. He had awakened earlier than Chu Kuangtu to begin with. When he had awakened, Chu Kuangtu had already recovered his strength. Now that Nyodali had successfully broken through to the 7th immortal realm, all the gap had been shortened to an invisible point. In this way, he was confident that he would be one step ahead of Chu Kuangtu and recover to a higher level. When he was strong enough, Nyodali had already sworn that he would suppress Chu Kuangtu in the cesspool again and would never let him out for at least 100,000 years. Otherwise, Chu Kuangtu did not learn his lesson. Since Green Ox is broken through, why don't you come to my place and have a seat? An ethereal and magnificent voice came from the darkness, making Nyodali look stunned again. All of a sudden, his face became a little more solemn. Nyodali knew that it was Qin Shujian's voice. Just a conversation made him understand that his strength was not weaker than Chu Kuangtu's, but compared with Emperor Qin, there was still a huge gap. They were both reincarnated Dao fruits. Chu Kuangtu had reached a profound level. Half-step Dao fruit? Nyodali thought to himself. He was not sure whether Qin Shujian had broken through to the half-step Dao fruit realm. But based on the methods he had just shown and his own speculation, even if Chu Kuangtu had not broken through to the half-step Dao fruit realm, he would definitely not be too far away. At this level, he was only one step away from the Dao fruit realm. With Qin Shujian's comprehension of the Dao fruit in his previous life, his success rate of breaking through to the Dao fruit realm was many times higher than that of others. In short, it was very likely that Qin Shujian would soon be able to recover his peak strength of the third era. Dao fruit. Nyodali's eyes flickered, and then he took a step forward and walked in the direction of the heavenly palace. Chu Kuangtu was one step ahead. There was no way for him to catch up for the time being. Fortunately, he had no intention of competing with Qin Shujian.
Soon,
Nyodali came to the gate of the heavenly palace. Mu Yang, who was guarding there, woke up. After seeing Nyodali, he directly let him in. Obviously, Mu Yang had already received instructions long before he came. There was no obstruction. Nyodali stepped into the heavenly palace. P.S. Public account by Fo Yifei. There will be more updates here.
Chapter 808.
Emperor Qin. Brother Nyo, you're here. Qin Shujian smiled faintly and waved his hand. A stone table and a stone stool appeared. Nyodali did not hesitate and sat down on a stone stool. Qin Shujian sat opposite him. Speaking of which, Brother Nyo's breakthrough to the 7th level of the immortal realm is also a joyous matter for the heavenly court. It's not good to blindly break through in seclusion, so I invited you to come over. Qin Shujian smiled and poured a cup of spirit tea for Nyodali as he spoke. That brute has also broken through. Blade Master successfully broke through not long ago. Qin Shujian nodded. He's now in seclusion, preparing to break through to the 8th level of the immortal realm. Nyodali's expression did not change, and he asked faintly. Hearing this, Qin Shujian smiled faintly and did not say yes or no. Seeing this, Nyodali understood. He picked up the teacup and drank it. Then he stood up. I have to go back too. The 7th level of the immortal realm is just the beginning. There's still a long way to go. I'm not as good as Emperor Qin, but I'm already a step away from the Dao fruit. Brother Nyo, take care. Qin Shujian did not stop him. Chu Kuangtu's seclusion had obviously put a lot of pressure on him. In that case, let Nyodali go back. Anyway, the stronger the opponent was, the greater the benefits for the heavenly court. When Nyodali was leaving, outside the heavenly court, a few people came from outside. This is where the heavenly court is. No one is allowed to enter without orders. The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals guarding the southern heaven gate immediately stopped them. Southern heaven gate. Yihong looked at the white jade gate in front of him with a shocked expression. It was supposed to be a simple gate, but it inexplicably gave him a lot of pressure. When the others looked at the southern heaven gate, they had the same reaction. At this moment, Qin Air and the Emperor of Heaven's incarnation did not speak, but an ethereal voice came from inside the heavenly court. Let them in.
Yes.
Hearing this, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals were all shocked. They hurriedly bowed to the southern heaven gate, then straightened up and made way.
Seeing this,
Qin Air and the others didn't say anything and walked straight into the southern heaven gate. After crossing the southern heavenly gate, someone couldn't help but say, "So this is the legendary heavenly court." As expected, other places can't compare to it. Heavenly court. The shock in Yihong's heart intensified. He was now certain that Qin Air's identity was absolutely not as simple as he imagined. If he could bring people in and out of the heavenly court at will, then he would at least have a high status in the heavenly court. Don't talk too much. Just follow me quietly. One of the incarnations of the Emperor of Heaven said indifferently. Hearing this, the few players tactfully shut their mouths. Until now, they did not dare to be presumptuous in front of the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven. In the past, no matter how powerful Emperor Heaven's incarnation was, it was nothing more than an NPC in the eyes of players. At worst, they'd lose a level if they offended him. But things were different now. The game wasn't a real game. The NPCs weren't real NPCs, and the players weren't real players. If he really angered the other party, he might be completely obliterated, even if the possibility was not high. But it was better to be safe than sorry. If the players were really completely killed, then their biggest trump card would also disappear. However, compared to the fear of death, the players valued the hidden opportunity more.
For them,
after coming into contact with the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven, it was more like understanding some truths that others were not qualified to know. It was quite a kind of feeling. The feeling of being the only one awake when everyone was drunk. It didn't take long for the few of them to follow the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven and arrive in front of the heavenly palace. Muyong seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. There was no movement at all.
just like that.
The three incarnations of the Emperor of Heaven led the three players straight into the inner hall of the heavenly palace. After entering the inner hall of the heavenly palace, the few of them immediately saw Qin Shujian sitting on the throne. For a moment, they were all stunned on the spot, not knowing what to say. At this moment, Qin Air and the other incarnations of the Emperor of Heaven suddenly dissipated and turned into streams of light that flew toward Qin Shujian. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into his body.
Such a change.
It made Yi Hong and the others' expressions change again. When they were panicking and at a loss, Qin Shujian spoke, breaking the silence of the inner hall. You are the players of the desolate Great World, the Nine Moons Great World, and the Red Jade Great World. I don't need to introduce myself.
I believe that you know a lot about me.
Even if you don't know me, you should have heard of me. Of course, this old man has heard of the great name of the Emperor of Heaven. Among the three players, an old man who is full of energy spoke first at this time. He simply glanced at the scene on the throne and instinctively lowered his head. A simple glance. It put him under a lot of pressure. Qin Shujian said, I believe you are all clear about the mission. I won't repeat it. As long as you are willing to be the vanguard for me, then you can get the benefits you want. Whether it is longevity or reaching the top of the world. I can satisfy all of your needs. Emperor of Heaven, are you serious? I have always disdained to lie. The premise is that you can show me the value that you deserve. Otherwise, you are not qualified to get those things. Qin Shujian said lightly. Hearing that, Yi Hong suppressed the panic in his heart and said, I am a person from the Nine Moons Great World. In the real world, my cultivation was destroyed, and even my meridians and dantian were broken. I don't know if the Emperor of Heaven has a solution. If it can be solved, I am willing to serve the Emperor of Heaven. Now, he could only pin his hopes on Qin Shujian. the ruler of the vast thousand world. Maybe there really was a way to solve the crisis in the real world. As long as he could take revenge, Yi Hong had no objection to being a world traitor. Qin Shujian said, "You don't need to tell me your name, because the one who brought you to the heavenly court is the incarnation of my power, so I already know everything about you. As for your cultivation being destroyed and your meridians and dantian being broken, it is not a troublesome thing. I can give you a cultivation method, and restoring yourself is just a piece of cake." After that, before Yi Hong could speak in surprise, Qin Shujian looked at the other two and said lightly, "Each of you has something to ask for, or something to obsess about. Otherwise, you would not be willing to work for me. We can satisfy all of your desires and desires. In order to show my sincerity, I can even give you part of the reward first. What you need to do is to complete the tasks that you need to complete." After that, with a wave of his hand, 3 streams of light burst out and landed directly in front of Yi Hong and the other two. Chapter 809. In the inner hall of the Heavenly Palace. Except for Qin Shujian, there was no one else. As early as half a day ago, he sent Yi Hong and a few other players away. Like Fu Moyan, those players had obtained the heavenly jade that was attached to their own power. In this way, there are pawns in the 4-player worlds. As long as they work hard and kill all the children of destiny in these worlds, I'd like to see how much strength you have left. Qin Shujian sneered. The strength of a world depended on many factors, the most important of which was the number of powerhouses and the number of children of destiny. If the two lost too much, in that case, the strength of a world would naturally be weakened. Now, the heavenly Tao of each player world was in a state of awakening, but they were not afraid of being discovered. Moreover, the identity of the local players was the best cover. Even if the heavenly Tao of those worlds was fully awakened, they might not be able to detect the abnormality. Qin Shujian sat alone on the throne. After placing people in several player worlds, he was also thinking about some things. The problem of the players at present can almost be put aside. No more actions are necessary. What needs to be done next is to destroy the 3 great clans of the Void Demons. If the 3 great clans were destroyed, then the Heavenly Court would only have to face the Demon Abyss. Before dealing with the 2, there was no need to delve into other things for the time being. But Qin Shujian suddenly stretched out his hand, and the heaven-reaching mirror above the southern heavenly gate turned into a stream of light and flew towards him. In less than a moment, the heaven-reaching mirror had already appeared in front of Qin Shujian. He waved his hand. Suddenly, an image appeared on the surface of the heaven-reaching mirror. It was the image of the Qianyuan realm. The palace of the human emperor was still the palace of the human emperor, and in front of the palace, there were 5 stone tablets standing tall. Those 5 stone tablets could be said to be the most powerful treasures of the Qianyuan sacred ground. Among them, there were also the inheritances of the human race engraved. Qin Shujian's gaze naturally fell on the 5 stone tablets. Or, to be more precise, they were 2 of the 5 stone steels. One of the 2 stone tablets was engraved with the human emperor's immortal slaying technique, while the other was engraved with the Heaven and Earth Tao Seeking Sutra. At this moment, a thick and dense aura was rising from the 2 stone steels. The 2 stone tablets were supposed to be inanimate objects, but in his eyes, they seemed to be living creatures. Time to prepare for the tribulation. Qin Shujian narrowed his eyes. These 2 stone steels had already shown signs of breaking through several years ago. However, it wasn't easy to go from an ordinary object to Zhu Bing's level. Therefore, after so many years, it was still in the process of transformation. However, Qin Shujian could clearly feel that the 2 stone tablets were on the verge of breaking through the tribulation. This was because he was the one who had personally created the steel. Between the two, they had a close relationship to begin with. Now that the stone tablets were about to transcend the tribulation and transform into Zhu Bing, Qin Shujian also felt it. These 2 stone tablets are indeed about to transcend the tribulation. If they succeed, the Emperor of Heaven will have 2 more protective treasures. Moreover, Zhu Bing is different from others. With 2 more pieces of Zubing, he will have a better chance of winning against the demon abyss in the future. In the sea of consciousness, Godslayer said in a deep voice. Whatever Qin Shujian could see, he could see as well. Through the mirror of the sky-reaching mirror, Godslayer could clearly feel the aura contained in the stone tablets. They were both Zubing. He could naturally understand how far away the 2 stone tablets were from transcending the tribulation. Qin Shujian said, even if they succeed, it will only be Zubing, a 1 tribulation ancestral armament. It wouldn't be of much use. In a battle between 9th Heaven Immortals and half-step Dao Fruits, not to mention 2 pieces of 1st Zubing, even 2 pieces of 4th or 5th Zubing might not be of much use. Unless it was Zubing who had transcended 5th tribulation, it would be a different story. 9th tribulation Zubing was of use to Dao Fruits. As for 6th tribulation Zubing and below 9th tribulation, it would be of great use to 9th Heaven Immortals and half-step Dao Fruits. Godslayer said, Emperor of Heaven, you have the heaven-deceiving technique. I believe it won't be difficult for Zubing to transcend the tribulation, as long as you plunder enough energy. There are many fierce beasts in the Sea of Death now. In addition to this place, the 3 major clans and the ancient stars in the outer realm also have many powerful beings. Let's wait until they successfully come out. Qin Shujian shook his head and immediately changed the topic. If you transcend the 6th tribulation now, how confident are you? If I transcend the tribulation now, I only have a 30% chance at most. Godslayer said. He hadn't accumulated his strength to a limit yet. Of course, compared to other Zubing, a 30% chance of transcending the 6th tribulation was not low. Under normal circumstances, Zubing only had a 10% to 20% chance of transcending the 6th tribulation. A 30% chance was actually a little over. Qin Shujian nodded slightly. A 30% chance is too risky. Let's wait a little longer. During this time, I'm too lazy to go out to the outer realm to look for fierce beasts. When the war with the 3 major clans starts, it won't be difficult to collect enough energy for you to transcend the tribulation. In the future, during the battle in the demon abyss, it would be best if you could reach the 7th tribulation. Godslayer could only unleash 200% of his current strength if he reached the 7th tribulation. In short, the current 5th tribulation Zubing's Godslayer didn't increase Qin Shujian's strength much. At his level, he was only 1 step away from the half-step Dao Fruit realm. Other than the ancestral armaments, at Qin Shujian's level, it was very difficult to improve his strength in other aspects. In other words, any cultivator who reached this level would face such a bottleneck.
For ordinary people,
The 9th Heaven Immortal was already a peak. It wasn't that easy to improve on the foundation of the 9th Heaven Immortal. 109th Heaven Immortals. They might not be able to break through to the Dao Fruit realm. What Qin Shujian could do now was to silently comprehend the laws of the upper-class world and wait for the inner world to evolve on its own. Until now, more and more living beings were born in the inner world, although a second perfected immortal had not been born yet. However, the experts who had touched the threshold of the perfected immortal realm had gone from being rare to quite a few now. According to Qin Shujian's estimation, in another 3 to 5 years, the inner world would once again welcome a period of rapid growth and strength. At that time, the number of perfected immortals could be said to be very small. It wouldn't be difficult to increase the number of perfected immortals by 10 to 20 times. Speaking of which, it's time for the human race to come out. Chapter 810. Inner World. Ever since Jianmu became an immortal and officially established the Eldar, the myriad races were born one after another, and the number of living beings gradually increased. Once the number of living beings increased, fighting and killing were unavoidable. Regarding these things, Feng ignored them. After he saw the establishment of the Eldar, he seemed to have fallen into a demon's trap. He only wanted to strengthen the human race. For this matter, Feng didn't even care too much about his own cultivation. It was just that as the first human race to be born in the world, his talent was already terrifyingly powerful. Even if he wasn't obsessed with cultivation, His own strength was also increasing at a fast speed. In a few years, he had already risen to the 10th level of the Celestial Being Realm, almost reaching the peak of the Celestial Being Realm. The increase of his realm. However, Feng wasn't happy at all, because he realized that it was extraordinarily difficult for him to create the human race. The birth of the Eldar is because there are flowers, plants, and trees in the world. But what should I do about the birth of the human race? Feng Meng walked aimlessly on the ground. In a few years, although he didn't finish walking through the inner world, he had walked through more than half of it. Along the way, he encountered other living beings. Either there were conflicts and battles, or he left some friendships. But even so, Feng was still clueless about the affairs of the human race. The birth of the Eldar could be said to have the greatest advantage because there were flowers, plants, and trees in the world. As long as they had intelligence, they could belong to the Eldar. Coincidentally, Jianmu was also a plant that had intelligence, so this race was born just like that. However, after such a long time, Feng still hadn't found anyone who was similar to him. Heaven and earth pay attention to the combination of yin and yang. I'm the only human, and there's no way to create more humans based on the principle of the combination of yin and yang. Sigh. How can I create more humans? Feng sighed. A few years had passed, but there were no results at all. He wanted to give up.
But
he had already paid the time. If he gave up just like that, Feng wouldn't be willing. Another half a year passed. Feng walked on the vast land. He still had no clue about the human race. All of a sudden, a voice reached his ears. Since you're here, why don't you have a seat at Benhuang's place?
Feng
was stunned for a moment before his expression turned serious. Before the sound came, he didn't notice it at all. After the voice was heard, Feng immediately spread out his spiritual sense, but he was unable to detect anything amiss.
Suddenly,
he raised his head to look ahead and froze on the spot. What used to be an ordinary mountain range in front of him was now a towering giant tree. Its branches and leaves spread out like a huge canopy, covering the sky and the sun. Ling Huang. Feng's expression changed again. There was only one tree in this world that could connect heaven and earth, and that was the Eldar Emperor. But the problem was earlier. He had not noticed Jianmu's existence at all. It was only now that the clouds parted and the moon was revealed. Feng did not even need to think to understand that the other party must have used some concealment method. He was a true immortal. It would be a piece of cake to deceive a celestial cultivator. Now, Jianmu had already spoken. Even if Feng was fearful, he had no reason to refuse. He took a step forward, and all the distance was reduced to inches. In the next moment, Feng was already standing in front of Jianmu. Feng greets Ling Huang. Looking at Jianmu in front of him, Feng politely cupped his hands in greeting. The situation was stronger than the person. Jianmu's strength was far above his, so he had to be polite enough. Otherwise, he would anger the other party. Feng was not confident that he could escape unscathed. After saying that, a human face appeared on the thick tree trunk. When he saw the face, Feng's expression was slightly stunned, as if he had seen a familiar existence, but he also felt that it was very unfamiliar. Jianmu said, "You're too polite. Ben Huang saw that you were close to Eldar's territory, so he specially invited you. He has no ill intentions, so you don't have to be too afraid." Ling Huang is joking. Feng did not let down his guard, but there was a faint smile on his face. Although facing a true immortal was stressful, no matter what he said, he was still one of the first living beings born in the world. In terms of strength, although he was not as good as Jianmu, he was still at the top. At this moment, when it was time to talk face to face, Feng did not easily show his fear. Ben Huang has seen a total of 2 people like you. Speaking of which, you are the second person Ben Huang has seen after several years. Jianmu's voice was calm, neither fast nor slow. When he spoke, there seemed to be a trace of nostalgia in his eyes. Feng frowned. Ling Huang has seen a second human? For some reason, the first thing he thought of was Qin Shu Jian, who he met when he was born. Jianmu said, Ben Huang is not sure whether he is a human or not, because he is the ruler of this world. For you to be able to be like him, Your future is limitless. As expected, Feng was shocked, but then he felt relieved. Jianmu's words made him sure that the person he was talking about was the one he knew. So Ling Huang has also seen his honor. Feng smiled slightly. So, you have also seen his honor? Jianmu's expression changed, and the canopy-like branches and leaves seemed to be brushed by a breeze, shaking slightly. Without waiting for Feng to answer, he asked again, "Where did you see his honor? Do you have any news of his honor's whereabouts?"
No.
Feng shook his head. "I've only seen your honor once when I transformed into my human form. Ever since then, I've never seen your honor's true form again." What a pity. Jianmu's eyes dimmed a little. He thought that he would have a chance to see Qin Shujian, but in the end, there was no news at all. After breaking through to true immortal, he also had a lot of doubts. Jianmu could not understand these doubts in a short period of time. Because of this, he was also a little annoyed. So Jianmu urgently wanted to find someone who could solve his doubts. Right now, between heaven and earth, the only one who could solve his doubts was the existence that created him.
So,
Jianmu hoped to see Qin Shujian again, so after hearing Feng's words, he was excited. But Feng's answer could be said to have extinguished his hope. After a while, Jianmu wiped away the disappointment in his heart, and his expression became calm again. Ben Huang lost his composure a little. His honor's whereabouts are unpredictable, and it is not easy to find him. His honor's whereabouts are hard to find. Feng also shook his head. He also wanted to see Qin Shujian and ask him to see if he could solve the doubts in his heart. Thinking of this, Feng suddenly stopped his gaze on Jianmu and gradually focused. Chapter 8:11. Jianmu noticed the change in Feng's expression. "If you have anything you want to say, feel free to say it. I want to ask you how to give birth to more humans," Feng said in a deep voice. Jianmu was the only true immortal in the world. If he asked him, he might be able to get the answer he wanted. No matter what, it was better than pondering by himself. The person Feng wanted to ask the most was still Qin Shujian, but the other party's whereabouts were mysterious and he couldn't find him. This way, he could only settle for the next best thing. Hearing this, Jianmu didn't immediately give an answer. Instead, he thought for a while before slowly speaking. The birth of living beings is nothing more than the intersection of yin and yang. Don't you know about this? Feng shook his head. I understand the principle of the intersection of yin and yang. But now that I'm the only human, this method won't work. This way, Jianmu fell into deep thought again. Although the matters of the human race had nothing to do with him, he still thought about Feng's question seriously. There was no other reason. Because the other party looked similar to Qin Shujian. Just based on this point, Jianmu had to do this favor. In the future, he might be able to form a good relationship with him. Eldar didn't like fighting and had a peaceful mind. But that didn't mean that he didn't care about anything. Time passed by. Jianmu woke up from his thoughts. All living beings in the world can't be separated from yin and yang and the 5 elements. For example, I, Eldar, use the earth element as the foundation to give birth to the world. If you can't walk the path of the intersection of yin and yang, why don't you start from the 5 elements? Since heaven and earth can give birth to living beings on its own, then it's completely reasonable for you to create the human race. Yin and yang. 5 elements. Feng was startled. In the past few years, he had traveled across half of heaven and earth, thinking about how to create the human race. But he had never started from the 5 elements of heaven and earth. Just as Jianmu said, the birth of living beings in heaven and earth was born from yin and yang and the 5 elements. If there was no way to start from yin and yang, then the 5 elements of heaven and earth might be the way to create the human race. Thinking of this, Feng immediately felt his thoughts clear up, as if the doubts that he had accumulated for a long time were suddenly enlightened.
Then,
he bowed and said, "Many thanks to Ling Huang for clearing my doubts." "You're exaggerating." Jianmu chuckled. "These are just simple truths. You don't understand them. You're just temporarily walking on the wrong path. Even if you didn't have Ben Huang's advice, you would have understood it in no time. Ben Huang's role is only to point it out a little. He did not arrogantly claim the credit.
It was just as he had said.
There were only a few ways to create the human race. Feng did not understand. That was because the other party had entered a certain misconception and was temporarily unable to walk out of it. He waited until he walked out of the misunderstanding. In that case, all the problems would be solved. He paused for a moment. Jianmu said, however, Ben Huang only knows this much. Whether it succeeds or not depends on your luck. That's enough. There was a smile on Feng's face. Although he had only gained some enlightenment and did not have many ideas, he knew what he should do. In this way, the probability of truly creating the human race would be very high.
It could be said that.
Jianmu's words completely pointed out the future of the human race. Feng was also grateful for this. Ling Huang's words, I will remember them in my heart. If the human race is born in the future, our two races will be allies. It's a good thing to be able to form an alliance with the human race. Jianmu's calm words came out. He did not have any objections to forming an alliance with the human race. After chatting for a while, Feng then cupped his hands and said goodbye. I still have important things to do, so I won't stay any longer. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely come again and have a long talk with Ling Huang. Ben Huang will wait for that day.
Goodbye.
Feng turned and left. From the beginning to the end, Jianmu did not stop him. He just quietly watched him leave. Not long after, Feng's figure completely disappeared from Jianmu's sight. He really looks like the Lord. Is he a human? Jianmu's branches and leaves trembled slightly. His muttering voice sounded in the surroundings, but it was not noticed by the other Eldar. As early as the moment he saw Feng, he felt that the other party had some relationship with Qin Shujian. There was no reason. It was just his intuition. But for such a feeling, Jianmu, on the other hand, was convinced. At his level, it could be said that he was the top existence in the world. Other than the Lord, no one could compete with him. A feeling in the underworld. Most of the time, it was a kind of enlightenment.
So,
Jianmu would carefully answer Feng's question. It could be considered as a good karma. Maybe this good karma would be of great help to him or the entire Eldar in the future. Even if it did not help at all, it did not matter. After all, it was just a matter of a few words. For Jianmu, there was no loss at all. A moment later, the face on the torso gradually disappeared. In the end, only a huge tree that reached the sky, and the earth was left, quietly rooted there. On the other side, after Eldar left, Feng immediately walked to other places. Staying with Eldar and facing Ling Huang, who was at the true immortal realm, he felt a lot of pressure. Even if he understood that Ling Huang had no intention of making a move on him, Feng did not want to stay for long. After all, there was a gap in strength. In the end, it made him feel insecure. That feeling, it was as if his life was in the hands of others. Whether he lived or died depended on the mood of the other party. In other words, if Jianmu had evil intentions, Feng felt that he would most likely die in the other party's hands. He had basically made up his mind. Before he broke through to the true immortal realm, he would definitely not meet Jianmu again. There was no other reason. It was just that he did not have enough confidence. When they were both true immortals, Feng would have the confidence to face Jianmu directly. The current him, he was still focused on creating the human race. He had a premonition that once the human race was created, he would be able to become an immortal on the spot. Moreover, his strength after becoming an immortal would be much stronger than his normal cultivation breakthrough.
It could be said that
creating the human race was the right path. As for the others, they were not the main thing. Loan does not grow, and Loan Yang does not grow. It should be difficult to create the human race with just yin and yang alone. If yin and yang intersect, there is no way. Now, what I can get my hands on is probably the 5 elements. Feng thought to himself. However, although he understood that yin and yang would most likely not allow him to create the human race, he still had a glimmer of hope.
So,
the place Feng was going to was not any other place but the place where the sun was born. Chapter 812. Desolate Great World. Array Faction Dojo. Coming out of the game cabin, Dojo Master Zong, he was still in a trance. Only when he sensed Tianyu in his mind did he completely wake up. So everything was real. The fate of my Array Faction Dojo will be completely changed. Zhong Yi's eyes were filled with vigor and vitality. It was impossible to tell that he was an old man. Zhong Hua and Zhuang Yan's inexplicable death had already made him feel like dead ashes. The death of two genius disciples caused the Array Faction Dojo to more or less lose all hope. Later, Zhong Yi put in a lot of effort to eliminate spies and people who might have acted in the dark, but there were no results.
He always thought that.
The ones who killed the two were other people in the Array Faction Dojo. But after coming into contact with Qin Shujian, Zhong Yi suddenly realized that he might have been wrong. Game. Let's call it a game world. Since players can really be killed there, then is it possible that Zhong Hua and Zhuang Yan were really killed by experts in the game? Zhong Yi thought in his heart. Originally, he didn't know that one could really die in the game, so he suspected that it was done by others. But now that he understood this matter, Zhong Yi also suspected that the two of them might have been killed by other experts in the game. Looking at Tianyu in his mind, Zhong Yi followed Qin Shujian's instructions and touched it with his mind.
Suddenly,
Tianyu was completely activated. The incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven that was hidden in it suddenly appeared in his mind. When he saw the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven appear, Zhong Yi's expression was stunned. But when Tianyu followed him to the desolate great world, he had already accepted this fact. So when he saw the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven, although he was still shocked, he quickly recovered. Greetings. Zhong Yi also formed his own figure in the sea of consciousness, preparing to bow and pay his respects to the strong with reverence in front of him. However, he suddenly paused, because he realized that he didn't know how to address the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven in front of him. Should he directly address him as the Emperor of Heaven? Or should I call him by the name that the other party gave me? Just as Zhong Yi was in a dilemma, the Emperor of Heaven's avatar said calmly, "You can call me Qin Si like before." Although the incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven was no different from the Emperor of Heaven, it was still the same. But the problem was, the current incarnation of the Emperor of Heaven was not the only one. Therefore, there was a need to distinguish between them. Otherwise, it would be awkward when they met in the future. Greetings, Senior Qin Si. Zhong Yi bowed. Yes. Qin Si nodded slightly and said, "You can slowly convert the Purple Heaven Divine Thunder Scripture now. After all, you are a few hundred years old. If you abolish all your cultivation at once, I'm afraid you will face a calamity of death. It's best if you transform it step by step. That way, even if your strength regresses a little, it won't threaten your current lifespan. When you successfully convert the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture, we will teach you what you want. At that time, you just have to fulfill your promise and help me get rid of some people. Senior, don't worry. I know what to do." Zhong Yi nodded. Even without Qin Si telling him, he knew how to convert the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture. As for why he wanted to convert the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture, the reason was very simple. Although the cultivation method of the Array Sect Martial Arts Club was powerful, it was relatively speaking.
in fact,
The strongest person in the Array Sect Martial Arts Club was only a Grand Master of Array Dao. The cultivation method left by that Grand Master was originally the top of the God martial arts realm. But with the decline of the martial arts club, the cultivation method was gradually lacking. Up to now, it could only barely cultivate to the God martial arts realm. Compared with the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture, it was like heaven and earth. As a result, how could Zhong Yi insist on cultivating his original cultivation method and not convert the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture? Besides, his talent was not very strong. If he cultivated his original cultivation method, the spirit martial arts realm was almost the limit. In a few years, he would face the danger of dying. Now that he was converting the Purple Heaven Divine Lightning Scripture, not only did he have the hope of breaking through the God martial arts realm, he even had the possibility of reaching the celestial realm. No matter from which aspect. Converting to the purple heaven divine lightning scripture was the best way. However, what really moved Zhong Yi and made him decide to cooperate with Qin Shu Jian was the reason. Besides the purple heaven divine lightning scripture and a series of promises, it was also that he could get the profound knowledge of arrays from the other party. The Arrays Sect Martial Arts Club. As the name implied, it was mainly about arrays. As the master of the Arrays Sect Martial Arts Club, Zhong Yi's biggest wish was to revitalize the martial arts club. This was the wish of generations of masters. It was also his wish. Although the improvement of his strength could also revitalize the Arrays Sect Martial Arts Club, that kind of revitalization was not what Zhong Yi wanted. Because the Arrays Sect Martial Arts Club was about arrays. If the martial arts club could be famous in the desolate great world with arrays, it would be a real revitalization. At the moment, in the Arrays Sect Martial Arts Club, there was only one array master like him. Without a great opportunity, there was almost no hope for him to break through to the Grand Master realm. But now that he was cooperating with Qin Shu Jian, there was a chance to break through to the Grand Master realm. After all, the Emperor of Heaven's array cultivation was enough to be called number one in the game world. To be able to get the other party's guidance, the benefits were self-evident. Even the top array masters in the desolate great world were not as good as the Emperor of Heaven. Immediately, Zhong Yi announced that he was going to cultivate in seclusion and told the disciples in the martial arts club not to disturb him.
To this,
the disciples of the martial arts club did not have any doubts. It was not a strange thing for the master to cultivate in seclusion. It often happened in the past. It was just that in recent years when the game came out, the time for seclusion decreased.
Soon,
Zhong Yi entered seclusion and began to cultivate the purple heaven divine lightning scripture. Just as Qin Si had said, he was already very old. If he were to abolish all his cultivation at once and start cultivating the purple heaven divine lightning scripture from the beginning, he might just die there.
So,
if he wanted to cultivate the purple heaven divine lightning scripture, he could only convert it bit by bit and maintain his own realm at the spirit martial realm. But in this way, the conversion time was a bit long. It took a full 2 months. Zhong Yi woke up from his seclusion. The cultivation technique that he originally cultivated had already been converted to the purple heaven divine lightning scripture. His realm also fell from the original spirit martial realm to the spirit martial realm's level 6. Even though his realm fell, Zhong Yi was not discouraged at all. He discovered that the surging life force that he had at the spirit martial realm's level 6 was not something that the original him could compare to. That feeling, it made Zhong Yi feel like he was reborn. Chapter 813. Is this the effect of the purple heaven divine lightning scripture? As expected, it's much stronger than the traditional techniques of my formation faction martial arts club. Zhong Yi's face was full of joy. Although his cultivation level had dropped by 3 levels, it was exchanged for a more robust foundation. Looking at his excited expression, Qin Si, who was in the sea of consciousness, suddenly said, "In your world, what is the realm of the strongest person?" The strongest person? Zhong Yi was startled, but he quickly came back to his senses. Without any hesitation, he immediately replied, "The strongest person is the 10th level of the celestial being realm. There are no true immortals in the desolate great world?"
No.
Zhong Yi shook his head. "I heard that as early as tens of thousands of years ago, there were true immortals in the desolate great world, but later, something happened and no true immortals were born. Over time, the 10th level of the celestial being realm was the limit. But even so, there is only one 10th level celestial being realm expert in the desolate great world. There are some other celestial beings." As the master of the Formation Faction Martial Arts Club and an expert of the 9th level of the Spirit Martial Realm, although Zhong Yi couldn't enter the upper echelons, he still knew a lot of secrets. After all, the Formation Faction Martial Arts Club used to be. It was an existence that gave birth to a Formation Grandmaster. Even if the Formation Grandmaster fell, this favor could be used in many cases. Hearing that, Qin Si didn't reply. Zhong Yi's words surprised him. He originally thought that since the desolate great world didn't have the age of chaos, there should be many experts. But now, it seemed that the strength was much weaker than he imagined. There was only one 10th level celestial being realm expert on the surface. Such a bold guess. Even if there were experts in the dark, the number of 10th level celestial being realm experts wouldn't be more than 5. At this moment,
Zhong-Yi seemed to have thought of something.
Speaking of which, an ancient force appeared a few years ago. That force is extremely mysterious, and even I don't know much about it. I only know that there is a powerful formation grandmaster there. As for whether there is a celestial being, I can't be sure. But after so many years, no one has dared to take action against it. According to my estimation, there must be many experts there. What force? Purple Heaven Dojo. Purple Heaven Dojo. Hearing this, Qin-Si was slightly stunned. After a while, he came back to his senses and said to Zhong-Yi, "You can temporarily ignore the matter of the Purple Cloud Dojo. The tasks that you need to complete now are all within the limits of your strength. As for exceeding the scope of your strength, it hasn't reached that point yet." "What should I do?"
Zhong-Yi asked.
Only by completing the mission could he obtain more benefits. Now, he was the first to obtain an incomplete Purple Heaven Divine Thunder Scripture. Other than that, he didn't get any extra benefits. Regarding this, Zhong-Yi naturally wouldn't be satisfied so easily. An incomplete Purple Firmament Divine Lightning Scripture could at most be cultivated to the 3rd level of the Heaven-Human realm. If this was in the past, not to mention cultivating to the 3rd level of the Celestial Being realm, even if it was just breaking through to the Celestial Being realm, he would be satisfied. But you have to know, the human heart was never easy to satisfy. Now that Zhong-Yi had a chance to reach a higher level, he did not wish to be stuck at the 3rd layer of the Heaven-Human realm. With such an opportunity, not only was he going to become a Deva, but he was also going to break through to the true immortal level. He was going to break a legend that no one had ever broken in the past tens of thousands of years. And the foundation of all this, it was under the premise of completing the mission. Without Qin-Si's help, without the Emperor of Heaven's help, Zhong-Yi didn't have the confidence to achieve such a goal by himself. Qin-Si said, "Sink your mind into the heavenly jade, and you can get the information you want." Hearing this, Zhong-Yi didn't hesitate and immediately sank his mind into the heavenly jade. The next second, an illusory map appeared in his sea of consciousness. On the map, there was a faint red dot flashing. Zhong-Yi looked at the map and the red on it, his face full of confusion. Seeing this, Qin-Si explained, "The map represents your current location, the scene within a radius of 10 miles. The red is the target you need to eliminate. As long as you eliminate more targets, you can get more benefits. Not to mention the later parts of the Purple Heaven Divine Thunder Scripture, even the knowledge of the 3rd level of Array Master and the cultivation method beyond the 3rd level, I can teach you." Zhong-Yi's breathing was a little rapid. The benefits that Qin-Si mentioned once again caused his originally calm heart to become fiery. Whether it was the Purple Heaven Divine Thunder Scripture or the powerful knowledge of Array Dao, they were all what Zhong-Yi needed now. Qin-Si's words. It could be said that they completely hit the bottom of his heart. As for the targets to be eliminated, whether they were innocent or not, or other problems, it was not within his consideration.
To Zhong-Yi.
As long as he could get benefits, it was right. Other things, they were all dispensable. After sorting out his mind, Zhong-Yi walked out of the place where he was in seclusion. When he walked out, the disciples of the martial arts club happened to pass by. After seeing him, they all stopped to salute and greet him. "Greetings, Club Master." "Club Master." Zhong-Yi nodded and didn't pay much attention to these disciples. He walked along the red dot on the map in his sea of consciousness. Just as he walked out of the gate of the Array Sect Martial Arts Club, suddenly, he saw a group of people coming towards him. "Club Master Zhong, long time no see. How have you been?" The leader was dressed in luxurious clothes and looked about the same age as Zhong-Yi. He had a warm smile on his face. Seeing this, Zhong-Yi also smiled. So it's Club Master Chiao of the Rising Dragon Martial Arts Club. Sorry for not going out to meet you. As he spoke, he also carefully sized up the person in front of him and the group of people behind him.
He could see.
The position of the red dot coincided with the position of this group of people. In other words, the target to be eliminated was in this group of people. Regarding this, Zhong Yi's heart was both excited and a little serious. The reason for his excitement was because he found the target. As for his seriousness, it was because of the strength of the group in front of him. Or, to be more precise, it was the strength of the people in front of him. The Rising Dragon Martial Arts Club was a force that was as famous as the Array Sect Martial Arts Club. The club master Qiao Long was an expert who had reached the early stage of the Divine Martial Arts Club. Even Zhong Yi, whose cultivation had not fallen, was not as good as him in terms of realm. Of course, with Zhong Yi's strength as an array master, he was not afraid of the other party. It was just that if the target of the red dot was really Qiao Long, it would not be easy to kill him quietly. On the contrary, if the target was only the other people in Qiao Long's group, then it would be easy. For a moment, Zhong Yi's mind was spinning, but he didn't show it on the surface. He warmly welcomed Qiao Long and the others in. Chapter 814. Inside the Formation Faction Martial Arts School. Zhong Yi and Qiao Long sat down. As for the people he brought, there were other arrangements. At this moment, Zhong Yi could clearly see that the red, it was a little far from him. Immediately, he heaved a sigh of relief. From the red, it could be seen that his target wasn't Qiao Long, this tough bone, but Qiao Long's group. I heard that 2 genius disciples of the Formation Faction Martial Arts School died, for no reason. Has Schoolmaster Zhong found the culprit? Qiao Long didn't know what he was thinking and smiled faintly. Hearing this, Zhong Yi's face darkened, but he wasn't angry. Thank you for your concern, Schoolmaster Qiao. The culprit hasn't been found yet. Does the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School plan to help? You and I are on the same path. If I can help, of course I'm willing. Qiao Long smiled faintly. It's just that it's easy to find the culprit, but it's extremely difficult to train disciples. It's a pity. Zhong Hua and Zhuang Yan were extremely talented. If they didn't die halfway, they might have a chance to break through to the Master Realm and revive the martial arts school's reputation. But now that they're dead, it won't be easy for Schoolmaster Zhong to train a successor. Schoolmaster Qiao doesn't need to worry about training or not. Zhong Yi wasn't angry. He casually picked up a teacup with an indifferent expression. Schoolmaster Qiao, you didn't come here just to greet me. If you have something to say, just say it. You and I have known each other for many years. There's no need for these empty words. Although the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School was as famous as the Formation Faction Martial Arts School, their relationship wasn't that good. This time, Qiao Long brought people here for a purpose. Zhong Yi didn't get angry because of his face and his self-cultivation. As for chasing people away, he didn't have that intention now. Since the target was the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School, he had to think of a way to get rid of them without anyone knowing. This way, it could save a lot of trouble. Although he had already joined Qin Shujian, Zhong Yi was clear that his strength wasn't enough to be unscrupulous. No matter how strong he was now, he was only a cultivator in the 6th level of the spirit martial realm. Even if he used the methods of a formation master, he would at most be able to deal with an ordinary god martial realm cultivator. If he encountered someone in the middle or late stages, or even the celestial being realm, he would die. Looking at Zhong Yi's appearance, Qiao Long's mood was carefree. It's nothing much. It's just that Dojo Master Zhong must have forgotten that the triennial competition is about to begin. The last competition was held in my Rising Dragon Martial School, so this time, it should be held in the Array Faction Martial School. In order to save the trouble, this old man directly brought people over. Competition. Zhong Yi suddenly understood. If Qiao Long hadn't mentioned it, he would have forgotten that there was such a thing as a competition. The Array Faction Dojo and the Rising Dragon Dojo were the biggest forces in the city. In other words, most of the resources in a city were divided between the two families. With the distribution of benefits, there would also be conflicts. In order to prevent the conflict from escalating and causing both sides to suffer heavy losses, an agreement was made. Every 3 years, the disciples of the two dojos would compete, and the winner would determine the amount of resources. This method could not only show the strength of the dojo, but also prevent the conflict from escalating. Such a rule. It had been going on for many years. If Zhong Hua and the rest did not die, then Zhong Yi had great confidence in this competition. However, with the two of them dead, there was almost no one in the new generation of the Array faction martial arts school who could fight. If they really wanted to compete, there was a high probability that they would lose miserably. However, Zhong Yi also felt relieved. Even if the Array faction martial arts school lost miserably and the distribution of resources decreased a lot, it was only a temporary thing. As long as his strength increased, there was no need to waste time with the Rising Dragon Martial School. Seeing Zhong Yi's silence, Qiao Long thought that the other party was afraid. In this regard, he immediately smiled and said, "Does Dojo Master Zhong have a different idea? Or is it that the Array faction martial arts school doesn't have any capable juniors, so you want to admit defeat in advance?" In fact, it's not a problem to admit defeat. After all, the two dojos have been friends for so many years. This old man can also be merciful and not let you lose too much face. If you really don't want to compete, Dojo Master Zhong can say it. Facing Qiao Long's arrogance, Zhong Yi's eyes were gloomy. "Dojo Master Qiao, rest assured. Even if my Array faction martial arts school dies, we will not easily admit defeat. Since the date of the competition has arrived, then this old man will not be afraid. Don't say that my Array faction martial arts school has the advantage of time and place to bully you. I even let you rest in the dojo for 2 days to adjust. On the 3rd day, the competition will officially begin." "Good. Dojo Master Zhong is a straightforward person. This old man will do as you say." Qiao Long did not expect that Zhong Yi would dare to be so unyielding. But since the other party was not afraid, he also had no reason to be afraid. After deciding with one sentence, Qiao Long immediately got up and left. From beginning to end, he did not touch the cup of tea beside him. Zhong Yi did not stop Qiao Long from leaving. What he needed to do now was to temporarily keep the people of the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School and then find out who the red dot was. The outcome of the competition was not the key. The real key was to find the target and then eliminate the target. As he thought about this, Zhong Yi asked, "Senior, do you have a way to analyze who the red is when you get close to it?"
No.
Qin Si shook his head. "Because of the existence of the heavenly Tao, I have no way to leak my power out of your sea of consciousness. Once it is detected by the heavenly Tao, you will be instantly destroyed. Even if I personally take action, there is no way to save your life. Therefore, you can only rely on yourself to identify who the red is."
Finished.
Qin Si paused for a moment and continued. "In fact, as long as the red appears in your target range and is killed because of you, whether you personally take action or not, part of the mission is considered completed." "Thank you, Senior, for your guidance," Zhong Yi politely replied. He also understood Qin Si's words. In other words, during the competition, if the disciples of the Array faction martial arts school killed the red, it would be considered as completing the mission. But the problem was, with the current means of the disciples of the Array faction martial arts school, it would be very difficult to kill the other party. After all, the people sent by the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School would not be weak. Among the disciples of the same generation, even if Zhong Yi did not want to admit it, he had to know a fact. That was, the Array Faction Martial Arts School was not as good as the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School. It seems that this matter needs to be considered at length. Zhong Yi thought in his heart. At present, he could only take one step at a time. If he really killed the disciples of the Rising Dragon Martial Arts School during the competition, it could only be said that it was an accident. There would not be any big problem. The main problem was, how was he going to kill it?
For this,
Zhong Yi fell into deep thought. Chapter 8:15. Just as Zhong Yi was looking for an opportunity to complete the mission, Qin Shu Jian also obtained information about several worlds through several incarnations of the Emperor of Heaven. He found out, except for the Tianhuang Great World, which was in the Age of Chaos, the other three worlds had not experienced the Age of Chaos. But it was the same. The upper limit of the worlds that did not have the Age of Chaos was surprisingly consistent. That was celestial. In other words, in the four-player worlds, so far, no true immortal had been born. Even if it was calculated tens of thousands of years ago, there were no true immortals. More or less. It was because of some unknown reasons that led to the existence of no true immortals. Without the existence of true immortals, it meant that no matter how strong these worlds were, their strength was limited. In this case, Qin Shu Jian also somewhat understood. After all, the strength of the cultivators determined the strength of the world. If a world that could accommodate true immortals or even stronger reached into Huanyu, then Huanyu would definitely not have the qualifications to resist. On the contrary, only by looking for such a world could Huanyu's needs be satisfied. Perhaps in the real world, this kind of strength should be the weakest. Any existence had a distinction between high and low, and it was the same for worlds. With Huanyu's strength, it was estimated that he could only find such a world. However, it could not be ruled out that there were weaker worlds. But there was no need to find such a world. Qin Shu Jian sorted out a lot of things from the information of several worlds. There are flaws in these worlds. Such flaws make them exist in the Age of Chaos, or true immortals cannot be born. Only with flaws can there be something to ask for. Therefore, Huanyu's appearance is of great use to them. If there are weaker worlds in the real world, it is impossible to reach into Huanyu. After all, the big fish eat the small fish, and the small fish eat the shrimps. Although the real power is above the illusory power. But in the illusory world, Huanyu and the Great Thousand Worlds should be considered the stronger ones. The power in the real world is too weak, and there is no possibility of annexation. There is even a possibility of being killed. Only with the level of the four-player worlds would dare to reach into the Great Thousand Worlds. Obviously, Huanyu is choosing a suitable target, and the world in the real world would also choose whether to enter the trap or not. He regained his senses from the matters at the world level. Qin Shu Jian, on the other hand, turned his attention elsewhere. The desolate Great World has an additional purple firmament Tao Palace, the Nine Moons Great World has an additional immortal Buddha sect, and the Red Jade Great World has an additional underworld. If I'm not wrong, it should be a backup plan that sneaked in. These forces all had certain characteristics. Qin Shu Jian could guess who was behind these forces just by listening to their names. Although his guess wasn't 100% accurate. However, the difference would not be too great. In his opinion, behind the Purple Cloud's palace stood Taoism. Strictly speaking, Niu Dali belonged to Taoism. The fallen Taiching holy man was one of the ancestors of Taoism. As for the immortal Buddha sect, they should be backed by people from the Buddhist sect. If it was the underworld, the person standing behind him was most likely a member of the sorcerer tribe. It was very likely that these experts were all existences from the first era. There was no other way. Among the few eras, the first era produced the most Tao fruits and was also the strongest. Apart from the outstanding figures of each epoch, the first epoch had the most people who could survive the Great Calamity and survive until now. But who is behind the Purple Cloud's Tao Palace and the immortal Buddha sect? Qin Shu Jian was puzzled. There were many experts from Taoism and Buddhism. He wasn't sure which one it was. Unless he interacted with them personally, he wouldn't know much. The green bull is fine. He doesn't have many goals. Even if he reincarnates, it won't affect me too much. However, if it's someone from Taoism and Buddhism, it'll be troublesome. Qin Shu Jian thought to himself as he tapped his fingers on the armrest. Niu Dali and Chu Kuangtu, who had awakened their innate intelligence, didn't have much ambition. Hence, they tacitly agreed to the rule of the heavenly court. However, their lack of ambition didn't mean that the other Tao fruits didn't have the same. If the two great worlds really returned, it might cause other problems. They were on the same side. However, it didn't mean they were on the same side. This was a hidden danger that was neither big nor small. If you don't cause any trouble when you return, I'll turn a blind eye. We'll still be on the same side. However, if you cause any trouble, don't blame me for being ruthless. Thinking of something, Qin Shujian's eyes flashed coldly. Back in the Third Era, there were experts from the Ancient Era who had caused him a lot of trouble. After he became the Emperor of Heaven, he had even killed some existences who hadn't fully recovered their strength. For this, he had even fought with the true Tao fruits of the First Era. It was only because everyone had the same goal that they didn't cause any more trouble. However, the main reason was that Qin Shujian was strong enough. In addition, the Third Era was his home ground. Together with the Heavenly Court's power, even the supreme existences of the First Era couldn't do anything to him. After figuring out who the backups in the player worlds were, Qin Shujian already had a plan. He would try peaceful means before resorting to force. He wouldn't go wrong. If those people really didn't know what was good for them, he would completely suppress them. After all, he had killed more than 1 or 2 Tao fruits. It didn't matter if he killed a few more. Whether the two sides were in the same camp was also not a problem. In Qin Shujian's opinion, those who didn't go against him were in the same camp. Those who went against him were all rebels. In the Third Era, he hadn't improved his strength too late and couldn't be too tough. However, this era was different.
Qin Shujian believed.
Unless it was a living Tao fruit, no reincarnated Tao fruit had the ability to fight against him. After death and life, he had been reborn in this era and already had a foundation that other Tao fruits couldn't have. After putting aside the matter of Tao sect and Buddhism, Qin Shujian also focused his attention on the underworld. If the underworld is really the underworld of the First Era, then the reincarnated one shouldn't have any conflict with me. After all, that one is famous for being calm. If I don't count the underworld, then the only hidden dangers are Tao sect and Buddhism. As for the underworld, Qin Shujian also knew a lot about it. In the First Era, there was once an expert who wanted to build a true underworld and perfect the heaven and earth reincarnation. He wanted to break the original barriers of the upper-class world and advance to the real level in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, he failed. For those who dared to take this step, even if they failed, he still had respect in his heart. Chapter 8:16. Reincarnation. It was a symbol of the completeness of a world. As early as the First Era, there was a supreme expert who wanted to establish a true reincarnation. But unfortunately, that supreme being had also failed. He turned his body into reincarnation, but in the end, it only turned into an incomplete reincarnation. But the name of the underworld was spread. This was true even in the Second and Third epochs. The existence of the underworld and the supreme expert who turned his body into reincarnation were all famous. Regarding this, Qin Shujian also knew a lot about it. In fact, he had even met that existence before. Although they didn't talk much, Qin Shujian had a good impression of him. The Purple Cloud Palace represents the Tao sect, the Immortal Buddha sect represents the Buddhist sect, and the underworld represents the Wu tribe. Judging from the current situation, the people of these great worlds are about to return. Since Chu Kuangtu had already returned, then the people of the other worlds should also return. Compared to the experts of the other great worlds, Chu Kuangtu was a bit of a drag. Among the 4-player worlds, the Tianhuang Great World had just come out of the Age of Chaos and was in the early stages of the Spirit Chi recovery. In terms of strength, it was also the weakest of the 4 worlds. However, in such a weak world, Chu Kuangtu was the first to be exposed and had to retreat to the Great Thousand World. If there was no comparison, there was nothing to say. But compared to the experts of the other 3-player worlds, they were as stable as old dogs. Chu Kuangtu was a bit worse. He was also a supreme expert. He was also a reincarnation Tao fruit. Chu Kuangtu had been able to develop steadily until now in such a powerful world. However, Chu Kuangtu was the first to retreat in the weakest world. This kind of gap was not just a little bit. Qin Shujian looked emotional. The first era is indeed the one with the deepest foundation of all the eras. Even if all the Tao fruits born in the next few eras are added together, there is no way to compare with the first era. Was the first era really that strong? Godslayer, who was in the sea of consciousness, couldn't help but ask. Xiao Chun had known Qin Shujian for so long, but he had never seen Qin Shujian hold a person in such high esteem. Or rather, it would be more accurate to say that he held an entire epoch in such high esteem. At this time, the stone saber was standing in the sea of consciousness. Powerful saber qi emanated from the saber, which was then absorbed by his sea of consciousness, causing it to transform bit by bit. However, Qin Shujian's sea of consciousness had already reached a terrifying level. Hence, the saber qi that the stone saber emitted was not of much use against him. Of course, in response to the question, Qin Shujian smiled faintly. The first era was the era when the universe was first created. It was the peak era of all the eras. The Tao fruit experts born in that epoch were simply incomparable to those born in other epochs. Even if all the Tao fruit experts of a second and third epochs were added together, their numbers couldn't compare to the first epoch. As for strength, that goes without saying. Hiss! Godslayer sucked in a breath of cold air like a normal person and asked in disbelief. The first era was so strong, but it actually reached the end of its road. In the face of reality, any illusory existence is not qualified to compete. This is a fundamental difference. It's not that easy to make up for it. Qin Shujian's smile faded, and it was replaced by a solemn expression. Reality was the greatest enemy of the illusory. Even someone as strong as the first era had no way to compete with it and could only dejectedly walk towards destruction. Subsequently, Qin Shujian smiled again. But our epoch is different. Compared to the first era, the strength of this epoch is much weaker, but the advantage is also very obvious. Therefore, the possibility of transcending the tribulation is much greater than that of the first era. I also want to personally experience what it will be like after reaching the real plane. His eyes were also filled with longing and curiosity. The real plane. It was an existence that the Tao fruit experts of the past had pursued. Although Qin Shujian had divided his power into clones and entered the real world along with the players, that was equivalent to being a bystander. There was no way to experience the difference. Soon. It won't be long before we reach it. Qin Shujian's eyes flickered. As the Emperor of Heaven, he could clearly feel that the four-player worlds were closing in step by step. It was not too far away from the real invasion. But before that, the matter of the demon abyss had to be resolved. Qin Shujian was basically certain that the Tao fruit that had fallen hadn't truly perished. The purpose of the demon abyss. It was to attack the Greater Thousand World. No, it should be to destroy the Greater Thousand World. Once the Greater Thousand World was destroyed, then the mark of the player's heavenly Tao invasion would be directly erased. In other words, the real power would be completely expelled from this universe. Unless it was until the end of the epoch, otherwise, there would no longer be any real power within the universe. People of different paths could not make plans together. Since the other party chose to live, Qin Shujian had nothing to say. However, Mo Yuan's actions had already blocked his path. For this, Qin Shujian would not be soft-hearted. Let's wait a little longer. When the heavenly court strength is a little stronger and after destroying the three major clans, we will officially start a war with the demon abyss. With a simple exhale, the bright star power in the inner hall of the heavenly palace vibrated. Qin Shujian calmed his mind, tore the mother stream of laws with one hand, and entered it. There were not enough seed of laws in the inner world. If he wanted to increase his strength, he could only find opportunities to comprehend more seed of laws. The number of true immortals in the Greater Thousand World was still not many. He had just harvested a wave of seed of laws. In the next few years, there would be no way to harvest a second wave. He would wait a little longer. When the number of true immortals in the Greater Thousand World doubled, Qin Shujian would harvest again. After all, every time he harvested, he would get a few hundred seed of laws. Such a good thing. How could he let it go so easily? If it was not for the lack of time, he would follow the current trend and cultivate true immortals step by step. Then, after a period of time, he would harvest another wave of Seed of Laws. Qin Shujian was confident that he could safely cultivate back to the peak of the Third Era. The distracting thoughts in his heart disappeared very quickly. At this moment, he had completely entered the mother stream of laws. In the mother stream, the laws that were as vast as the stars flowed quietly like river water. The moment Qin Shujian entered, the entire mother stream of laws went berserk. The surging river water roared, wanting to drown and swallow him. The mother stream of laws did not welcome this intruder. In addition, Qin Shujian had absorbed 4 Seed of Laws, which angered the mother stream even more. Chapter 8:17. If the mother stream of laws was compared to a living being, then the laws contained within were equivalent to the property of the living being. Any person. If someone stole something, they would not be in a good mood. When faced with a thief, they would naturally be moved and angry. Although the mother stream of laws did not have intelligence and was not considered a living being in the true sense, it still had some instincts. Now that it had sensed Qin Shujian's entry, its anger could be imagined. Looking at the surging waves around him, Qin Shujian casually pressed out with his palm and completely suppressed the waves. In the next instant, he took a step forward and a tyrannical aura spread out, suppressing the surroundings. In terms of strength, Qin Shujian was already a peak existence among the 9th Heaven Immortals. Even if he had not entered the half-step Dao Fruit Realm, he was not far off. If heaven and earth were to be compared to a powerful Dao fruit, then the mother stream of laws, as a part of heaven and earth, its strength could almost reach the Dao Fruit Realm. If the mother stream really had intelligence, under a full counterattack, with Qin Shujian's current strength, there was absolutely no possibility of resisting. But the problem was, the mother stream of laws was not a real living being, so theoretically speaking, the Dao Fruit Realm was only theoretical, relying on its instincts to counterattack. For Qin Shujian, who had reached the peak of the 9th Heaven Immortal Realm, it was not a big threat at all. All the stormy waves, as long as they came close, were slapped down by Qin Shujian's palm. The river water below was surging. With a step forward, it was completely suppressed. At this moment, Qin Shujian stepped into the mother stream of laws. The long rivers of laws swept past him and quickly disappeared. Until now, the inner world had borne a total of more than 1,000 seeds of laws. Although compared to the vast starry laws in the mother stream, there was no comparison at all. But after comprehending many seeds of laws, he would inevitably encounter some familiar laws, so he needed to carefully search for and choose. After an unknown period of time, Qin Shujian saw a long river of laws, and his eyes instantly lit up. He took a step forward and forcefully broke through it. Just as he was comprehending the laws, under the infusion of the star power, the 4 great continents were undergoing subtle transformations. First, ever since Jin Linghuang became an immortal, many other powerful beings of the myriad races tried to use the physical sanctification system to transcend the tribulation and become immortals. However, the immortal ascension tribulation was extremely powerful. Not everyone had Jin Linghuang's background. Thus, not everyone would be able to pass the tribulation with a 100% success rate. It was the first time. There were experts of the myriad races who failed to transcend their tribulations and died in the lightning tribulations without anyone stopping them. Some experts had fallen. Naturally, there would be a lot of impact. The others finally understood how dangerous the immortal ascension tribulation was. However, with Jin Linghuang's tribulation before them, even if someone failed, there was no way to dispel the thoughts of others. Unless he really wasn't confident. Otherwise, they would all want to try to transcend the tribulation. How are the preparations? In the main hall of the 9-headed secret realm, the dog emperor looked down at Zhu Chen, who was standing below, and asked calmly. Zhu Chen, who had just come out of seclusion. At this moment, the aura on his body was erratic. At times, it seemed extremely tyrannical, and at other times, it seemed extremely dispirited. Tomorrow, I will begin my tribulation. Zhu Chun had a faint smile on his face as he cupped his hands and replied. The Dog Emperor said, "How confident are you?" "If nothing goes wrong, I should be 80% confident." Zhu Chun smiled faintly. 80% is enough to give it a try. The Dog Emperor nodded. Zhu Chun's strength was extremely powerful to begin with, although he was only ranked in the top 20 of Zhou Tian's general ranking. But that was because the other party hadn't updated his ranking. If one were to really talk about foundation, among all the experts at the limit of the heavenly being realm, there weren't many who could be stronger than Zhu Chun in terms of foundation. Long before the Dog Emperor became an immortal. Thus, he had the thought of making Zhu Chun the next emperor candidate. However, as he broke through to the true immortal realm, his lifespan had increased to 129,600 years. The matter of the next successor could be put aside for a while. As a result, Zhu Chun's strength could be imagined. When you become an immortal, Ben Huang will find an opportunity to see if he can arrange a deity position for you in the heavenly court. Our nine-headed dog clan's foundation is weak. Until now, there hasn't been a second true immortal born. Even if you become an immortal, there are only 2 true immortals in a clan. Compared to those top clans, it's still a lot worse. If we can have another deity position in the heavenly court, it will be of great benefit to our clan in the future. The Dog Emperor said in a deep voice. The deity position in the heavenly court was extremely important. The heavenly law was about to be born, which meant that the heavenly court system would be more perfect and its credibility would be stronger. When the heavenly soldiers and generals were formed, then most of the experts in the myriad races would be controlled by the heavenly court. When that time came, to be able to have a deity position in the heavenly court was equivalent to having a lot of resources. It would be of great use to the future of the clan. I will definitely not disappoint the emperors. Zhu Chun's heart was surging. If he could obtain a deity position in the heavenly court, it would be a great thing. The heavenly court's deity position. Not only the authority brought by the deity position, but it also greatly increased one's strength. The next day, all the experts of the nine-headed dog clan gathered together. Everyone's expression was solemn as they looked at the person standing in front of them. Zhu Chun. The news of him breaking through to the true immortal realm had already spread to the upper echelons of the nine-headed dog clan. Being able to witness an expert become an immortal at close range was a great benefit for ordinary experts.
So,
the experts of the nine-headed dog clan had gathered together to watch Zhu Chun undergo his tribulation. Standing in front of him, Zhu Chun clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the scene in the sky. Because the secret realm of the nine-headed dog clan was completely open, he could see everything in the outside world by simply looking up. He was waiting for a suitable time. When it came to breaking through to the true immortal realm, Zhu Chun's mind couldn't remain calm. Right now, what he needed to do was to adjust his mentality and perfect his condition to a suitable level. When that time came, that was when he would truly begin his breakthrough. Why hasn't Elder Zhu Chun started his breakthrough yet? I'm not sure. He's probably waiting for the right time. I'll just watch quietly. Sigh. Our clan is finally going to give birth to a second true immortal. It's truly a blessing from the heavens. The experts of the nine-headed dog clan were conversing with each other using their divine wills. They didn't dare to speak, afraid that they would disturb Zhu Chun. He was about to break through. As bystanders, these people were actually more nervous than Zhu Chun. Time passed little by little. The atmosphere slowly became heavy. Finally, Zhu Chun's motionless body suddenly took a step forward and instantly disappeared from the spot. In an instant, the mother stream of precept surged, appearing from nowhere in the sky. All the experts of the nine-headed dog clan instinctively raised their heads and looked at the mother stream of precepts. At this moment, Zhu Chun had officially begun his breakthrough. Chapter 8:18. The Mother Stream of Laws. Walking into the Mother Stream of Laws, Zhu Chun found himself wrapped in a warm power. Everything he saw, It was the flowing mother stream of laws. Unlike when his spiritual sense entered the mother stream of laws, this time his real body entered the mother stream of laws. He found a completely different feeling from before. At this moment, in the originally calm mother stream of laws, a huge wave surged. That terrifying tremor. It made Zhu Chen's expression change drastically. That fluctuation made him feel as weak as an ant, pitifully weak. How could this be? Why would the mother stream of laws riot? What exactly happened? Zhu Chen was now in a state of shock and confusion. He was completely unclear. What exactly happened? His spiritual sense had entered the mother stream of laws so many times, but he had never encountered the mother stream of laws riot. Now that his real body had entered, he encountered it. Zhu Chen could not figure it out. Was this the case for everyone who became an immortal, or was he the only one who was so lucky to encounter such an unforeseen event? Boom! A palm that reached the heavens and the earth crushed down from the void, suppressing all the raging waves. In an instant, everything was calm. Zhu Chen's mind was in a trance again. The initial stormy waves and the current calm made him feel as if everything was just a dream. At this moment, someone walked over, and everything in his path was suppressed. After seeing that green robe, Zhu Chen hurriedly came back to his senses. Zhu Chen greets the Emperor of Heaven. So it's you. Qin Shujian also noticed Zhu Chen's existence, and his face revealed a look of realization. He was wondering why he felt that the mother stream of laws had some changes. Not long after, he met Zhu Chen. Subsequently, Qin Shujian seriously sized up Zhu Chen and immediately saw the mysterious aura fluctuation on the other party's body and understood. You're preparing to break through to true immortal. Emperor of Heaven's insight is like a torch. This time, I entered the mother stream of laws to break through. Zhu Chen nodded and admitted. To be able to meet Qin Shujian in the mother stream of laws was a complete accident. The mother stream of laws was vast and boundless. It was even more vast than the great thousand worlds. The difficulty of encountering other cultivators in the mother stream was not an ordinary one. At the very least, Zhu Chen had never met any other cultivators after entering the mother stream so many times. Qin Shujian asked, "Did you achieve the Tao through the rules or through the physical body?" What I'm walking on is the path of physical sanctification. If you have a physical sanctification body, don't completely resist the thunder tribulation when you first encounter it. Enduring the thunder tribulation to temper your body will be greatly beneficial to you, and your chances of successfully overcoming the tribulation will also be greatly increased. Qin Shujian thought for a while and decided to give him some advice. It was fate that brought us together. Since they had met in the mother stream, he might as well say more. These things. Qin Shujian didn't intend to tell anyone about it. Instead, he wanted to let the cultivators figure it out on their own. However, for Zhu Chen to be able to meet him in the mother stream, it could only be said that he was lucky. Hearing this, Zhu Chen silently remembered these words and then bowed. This one will never forget the kindness of the Emperor, Heaven's guidance. Go. Qin Shujian waved his hand and then took a step forward, disappearing from his original spot. Seeing this, Zhu Chen once again faced the direction where he was originally standing. After cupping his hands, he began the next step of his breakthrough. If it wasn't for Qin Shujian's guidance, he wouldn't have known that enduring the thunder tribulation to temper the body was the best way to overcome the tribulation. On the other side, Qin Shujian was still wandering in the mother stream. The current him no longer had to worry about being counterattacked by the mother stream. He would need to recuperate from his injuries every once in a while. Relying on his tyrannical strength, the so-called counterattack wouldn't have much of an effect at all. If there's a chance to comprehend the ancient Emperor Heaven's rules into the corresponding seat of rule, that would be quite good. Qin Shujian thought of the long river of rules that connected heaven and earth. That was the rule of the ancient Emperor Heaven, Qin Song. It could be said that the law of the ancient celestial emperor was the strongest law in the mother stream of laws. Qin Shujian guessed. That rule should be related to the Emperor Heaven's rule. If this seat of rule was comprehended, the inner world might usher in a great battle. After all, if it was really the Emperor Heaven's rule, then once comprehended, the inner world might give birth to the heavenly court. When that time came, needless to say, when the 10,000 races fought for the position of the Emperor Heaven, there would naturally be casualties.
Similarly,
That kind of rule was also very powerful. If he could comprehend it, it would be much better than comprehending other seed of rule. Moreover, even if he didn't comprehend the ancient Emperor Heaven's rule, when the inner world evolved in the future, the heavenly court would be born sooner or later. At that time, the Emperor Heaven's rule would also be born. Comprehending the corresponding seed of rule would, at most, bring this matter forward. However, there's no need to rush. That rule is too powerful. Unless I break through to the half-step Dao fruit realm, it's too risky. Qin Shujian had a plan in his heart. The ancient Emperor Heaven was in existence at the half-step Dao fruit realm. That rule almost pierced through the mother stream of rule. If he really wanted to go in, without thinking, he could understand what kind of counterattack he would encounter. Perhaps, in the long river of rules, he would also encounter the power of the ancient Emperor Heaven. Even though the half-step Dao fruit realm and the 9th level immortal realm didn't seem to be much different, the difference was still not small. It wasn't at that level. Qin Shujian wasn't 100% confident that he could retreat unscathed. If he were to suffer some injuries for this matter, even if it was a minor injury, it wouldn't be worth it. Because at his realm, either he wouldn't be injured, but once he was injured, it wouldn't be so simple to replenish his energy. Even if his injuries on the surface had recovered, the internal wear and tear was still present.
so,
Qin Shujian also didn't plan to touch that rule for the time being. After wandering for a long time, he saw a rule that was only a few dozen feet wide and directly barged in. He didn't even need to use the God Slayer. At this moment, Zhu Chun had already opened up the battlefield of rules. When he was with Jinling Huang, when he reached the end of the long river of rules, he didn't leave his imprint on the rule monument. Instead, he chose to shatter it. The monument shattered. The battlefield of rules was instantly shattered. Zhu Chun took advantage of this opportunity to grab a moderately sized piece of the rule fragment and fuse it into his body. In an instant, thunder rumbled. Terrifying heavenly might emerged, accompanied by the roar of thunder, as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. That terrifying power made all the powerhouses who felt the power of the thunder tribulation feel as if there was a huge rock pressing on their hearts. As the target of the heavenly tribulation, Zhu Chen's expression was solemn. His power had already increased and condensed. All of a sudden, the heavenly lightning struck. He originally wanted to directly use his power to offset it, but after thinking of Qin Shujian's words, he withdrew part of his power and let the heavenly lightning strike his body. Chapter 819. Zhu Chun became an immortal without any mishaps. With Qin Shujian's guidance and his own profound foundation, although the process of transcending the tribulation was somewhat tortuous, he still succeeded in the end. Time passed. The great thousand world fell into a short period of peace. According to Qin Shujian's instructions, the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals would be selected every once in a while. Fortunately, the power of the stars was now rich. Although it was not easy to become a perfected immortal, there were many heavenly beings. Until now, the heavenly beings were no longer high-end combat forces. They could only be considered mid-range combat forces. The grand occasion of the ancient times has reappeared. Xiao Chengfeng stood in front of the southern heavenly gate. Everything he saw was blocked by the heaven and earth hurricane. Even so, he could see a lot of things. In the ancient times, the heavenly beings were just the beginning. There were plenty of heavenly beings in any clan. The cultivators of any clan were born with the true martial realm. They could break through to the spiritual martial realm when they were young and reach the divine martial realm when they reached adulthood. With a little effort, they could break through to the heavenly being realm. It could be said that, among the ancient humans, the divine martial realm was almost at the bottom. After all, As long as they reached adulthood, they would reach the divine martial realm. Under such circumstances, those who could not break through to the heavenly being realm were either extremely untalented or extremely lazy.
Such people.
They were at the bottom of the human race. Xiao Qingfeng pinched his fingers and calculated. He sighed again. It has only been about 15 years since the establishment of the heavenly court. If we have a little more time, I'm afraid we can surpass the peak of the ancient times. Yes, the changes in the Great Thousand World are beyond my expectations. Wu Ming also sighed. He had always been by Xiao Qingfeng's side and knew the changes in the Great Thousand World the best. Not to mention other things. Among the human race, the true martial realm was considered to have truly stepped into the threshold of cultivation. The spiritual martial realm was an expert, and the divine martial realm was enough to oversee a region. As for the heavenly beings, their numbers were even rarer. Any heavenly being cultivator was an important existence. Compared to the current human race, the human race before the establishment of the heavenly court was simply weak and pitiful. The other races, not to mention, although there were more heavenly beings than the original human race, there was a limit. Or else, when the human race left the eastern continent, they would not let the human race gain a foothold. The reason was that the strength of the myriad races was limited. If the human clan at that time had the current strength of the human clan, they would have been able to flatten the 4 great continents even without a true immortal. It wasn't just the current human race. If it were any of the myriad races, it would have been possible to wipe out all the myriad races 10 to 20 years ago. This was the change in strength. With the infusion of the power of the stars and the establishment of the heavenly court, various experts became immortals. After the cultivation techniques and legacies were perfected, there was an endless stream of experts. Their strength could not be mentioned in the same breath. Xiao Qingfeng smiled faintly. Even if it was me, when the heavenly court was first established, I would never have thought that 10 years later, the 10,000 races would be able to reach where they are today. With the current strength of the great wide world, if they were to really go to war with the demon abyss, they would have at least a 30% chance of winning. With the addition of those few existences, our chances of winning might increase to 50%. Thinking of Qin Shujian and Chu Kuangtu, Xiao Qingfeng felt an inexplicable pressure in his heart. He was very clear. These few people were not simple existences. They were the reincarnations of Dao fruits from other eras. The Dao fruit realm was the realm that Xiao Qingfeng had been pursuing. It was also the realm that all experts who had reached the 9th level of immortal were pursuing. However, even someone as strong as the ancient Emperor of Heaven was unable to truly break through this threshold. Perhaps with Qin Song's talent, he might be able to successfully break through if given tens of thousands of years. However, any guesses were just guesses before they became reality. Therefore, Xiao Qingfeng could speculate how terrifying the existence of the Dao fruit realm was. Even if it was the reincarnation Dao fruit, its foundation was not something that others could compare to. If Qin Shujian was just a talented cultivator who had reached the 9th level of immortal step by step, then in Xiao Qingfeng's opinion, the chances of winning against the demon abyss were at most 30%. However, after putting on the skin of the reincarnation Dao fruit, the chances of winning had increased by at least 20%. A 50% chance of winning. That was already very high. Seriously speaking, the 10,000 ancient races only had a 30% to 30% chance of winning against the demon abyss. When facing the demon abyss, the heavenly court was not completely one-sided, but they were still defeated step by step. The demon abyss was very powerful. Now that Xiao Qingfeng thought about it, he was still very wary. Give me some more time. My strength can recover even more. He turned his attention to himself. With the foundation of his previous life. In addition to the excellent cultivation now, Xiao Qingfeng had also broken through to the 5th level of immortal. However, to break through to the 6th level of immortal, there was still some distance. To recover to the upper 3 levels of true immortal, he estimated, unless he was given another 20 years, or if the power of the stars became stronger, it would be very difficult to shorten this time gap. However, even so, Xiao Qingfeng was very satisfied with this. After all, it had only been a dozen years since he had awakened his innate wisdom. A dozen years, less than 20 years. He had broken through from the immortal realm to the 5th level of immortal. Under normal circumstances, it was reasonable for the time to break through to the current realm to be 10 or 20 times faster. In other words, to break through to the 5th level of immortal, even with Xiao Qingfeng's foundation, it would take a few hundred years. Now it was 20 years. To break through to this realm was already unimaginably fast. After knowing that Qin Shujian was the reincarnation of Dao Fruit, Xiao Qingfeng no longer had any thoughts of comparing himself with him. He slowly retracted his gaze. Xiao Qingfeng turned and walked into the southern heavenly gate. Since the southern heavenly gate was set up, there was only one entrance in the entire heavenly court.
He was a little curious about this.
Why did Qin Shujian set up the southern heavenly gate and only one southern heavenly gate? If the 4 poles of heaven and earth were used as coordinates, there should be 4 entrances in the heavenly court. However, he did not see any eastern or western heavenly gates, only the southern heavenly gate. Because of the increase in heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals, the security of the southern heavenly gate had also become more strict. However, these years, the heavenly court was very powerful, and no one dared to barge into the heavenly court without permission. For immortal gods like Xiao Qingfeng, who had a deity position, those heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals would not be so free as to stop him from entering. He successfully walked into the southern heavenly gate. Xiao Qingfeng walked towards his original residence. He would only come out occasionally to relax, and most of the time, he would be in seclusion to cultivate. Or else, it was impossible for him to break through to the 5th level of immortal realms so quickly. The cultivation environment was one thing. Being hardworking was another aspect. Chapter 820. In the inner hall of the Heavenly Palace. It had been a long time since Qin Shujian entered the mother stream of laws. It was not because he had comprehended the corresponding seeds of all the laws, but because there was a change in his inner world, so he did not have extra time to go to the mother stream of laws to comprehend the laws. The human race is about to be born. Qin Shujian's mind was now completely immersed in his inner world. As the ruler of heaven and earth, nothing in his inner world could escape his eyes and ears. As long as his mind was immersed in it, he could see everything in his inner world. At this moment, Qin Shujian, his attention did not fall on other places, but on the sea. His inner world was born. Naturally, mountains and rivers would be born. Similarly, the sea would be born as well. In these years, the laws of heaven and earth were perfected, and living creatures were born in the sea. However, although Qin Shujian's gaze was cast on the sea, it did not fall on the other living creatures in the sea, but on the human race standing in front of the sea.
Wind.
As the first human race to be born in heaven and earth, Qin Shujian had always paid attention to it, and he also understood that it wanted to create the human race. Regarding this, he had never thought of interfering with it. But not interfering did not mean that he did not care. In fact, Qin Shujian was also very concerned about the birth of the human race. In other words, he was very concerned about the birth of any race. Because the birth of any race represented the maturation of the laws and the birth of endless mysteries. These mysteries, others could not comprehend it, but Qin Shujian, as the ruler of heaven and earth, did not have such restrictions. Even if he had reached his current realm, if he could comprehend the mysteries, he would gain a lot of benefits. Therefore, every time a new race was born, Qin Shujian would observe it for a while. Unfortunately, until now, the only one who had truly established a race was Eldar. As for the other living beings that were born, none of them had truly created a race. Regarding this, Qin Shujian could understand. After all, to be honest, it had only been 10 years since the birth of his inner world. For a normal world, in the first decade or so, there would be no changes at all. All of the living beings that were born were in a state of silence. Basically, they were all silently improving their strength. especially when Jianmu had become an immortal before. When other living beings had not broken through to the true immortal realm, they would not go out easily. Even for the first batch of living beings born from the heavens and earth, it wasn't easy for them to break through to true immortality. Normally speaking, the heavens and earth had just been born, and now it was truly beginning to become active. This time span was at least 10,000 years. If it was the third era, Qin Shujian had once returned to the long river of time and witnessed the birth of the third era and the situation of the myriad races contending for supremacy. The time span involved. It had been millions of years. Over the course of several million years, more than half of it was the time for living beings to be nurtured. Later on, it was the time for all kinds of cultivation breakthroughs. When their strength could no longer advance, these living beings would come out to be active. This kind of time span was the kind of progress that a world should have. His inner world had compressed millions of years into 10 to 20 years because he had been pulling up seedlings to help them grow. If he did not comprehend the seed of rule first, then he would have left behind a pile of true, immortal corpses. His inner world would not have reached the current stage so quickly. Compared to the third era, it would take at least 1,000,000 years to reach the current stage of his inner world. But there was no other way. Time waited for no one. Qin Shujian couldn't really wait for a few million years after opening up an inner world. He could wait for the heavens and earth to mature and become stronger step by step. Then his strength would increase accordingly. Walking the path of physical evolution, there was no threat to his lifespan. At least until now, Qin Shujian had not sensed the end of his lifespan. However, he could afford to wait, but the great wide world could not. Therefore, pulling up seedlings to help them grow was necessary. However, this process of pulling up seedlings to help them grow had to be paid attention. He could not rely on himself to improve. Otherwise, the potential of the heavens and earth would be exhausted in advance. On the contrary, Qin Shujian would personally shorten some of the unnecessary time, but for some necessary things, he would let the heavens and earth evolve naturally. This involved a very mysterious level. A heavens and earth that developed freely could have infinite possibilities. If one interfered too much with the heavens and earth, one's future achievements would be limited. At this moment, in Qin Shujian's line of sight, he could see that Feng was squatting on the ground, grabbing the moist soil by the seaside and molding clay figurines according to his appearance. The entire process seemed simple and unpretentious. It even felt like a child playing house. However, in Qin Shujian's eyes, Feng's current actions were already in accordance with the heavens and earth. He was the only one who could clearly see the formless mysteries. In the first era, humans were created from clay. In the second era, humans were born from clay. In the third era, humans were also created from clay. As for this era, there is no way to explore too much for the time being. But now, Feng is also on the path of creating humans from clay. Perhaps the birth of the human race in every era came from here. Qin Shujian observed Feng's actions. While he was comprehending the mysteries of the wind, he was also thinking about some things. The birth of the races in every era had their own opportunities. However, from what he remembered, the birth of the human race in every era was likely to come from the creation of humans from clay. No matter if it was the third era or this era, Qin Shujian was a pure human race. Now that he saw Feng creating humans from clay and witnessed the birth of the human race with his own eyes, there was an inexplicable throbbing in the depths of his bloodline. He couldn't help but feel excited. The change in his heart, Qin Shujian didn't interfere too much. He just comprehended the mystery while watching Feng's subsequent actions. To this, Feng didn't notice anything. He was now just like an ordinary person, squatting by the seaside, grabbing the soil with both hands and molding clay figurines according to his appearance in the sea. These clay figurines, each of them was only an inch in size, but they were lifelike. Each of the clay figurines had a different face, and their expressions were also different. If one looked carefully, one could even feel that these clay figurines were living creatures. There were already many clay figurines around Feng. At a glance, there were about a few hundred of them. There were many clay figurines. However, None of the clay figurines became real humans. Even so, Foam didn't stop for a moment. With a faint smile on his face, he was still happily creating clay figurines, causing the number of clay figurines on the seaside to increase. At the end, there were already thousands of them. Chapter 8:21. Making Humans Out of Clay. Foam just wanted to give it a try. In the past few years, he had traveled all over the inner world, going to places of extreme yang and extreme yin, but he couldn't find a way to create humans.
Apart from that,
Foam also tried to use the 5 elements of heaven and earth to create humans. Without exception, all his attempts failed. In the end, he could only pin his hopes on the last of the 5 elements of heaven and earth. Eldar used the earth element as its foundation. The earth carried all things and was also classified as the earth element. Therefore, in Feng's opinion, the probability of using the earth element to create humans was very high, so he tried it here. But he had an idea. How to implement it was another problem. He also thought for a long time before he made the action of making humans out of clay. At first, there was nothing. But as more and more clay figurines were created, a strange feeling gradually surged into his mind. That feeling, it made Foam forget about the things around him and only focus on making clay figurines one by one. After an unknown period of time, suddenly, there seemed to be something in the sea, and then a huge wave swept towards the sea. The monstrous sound of the waves. It directly woke Foam up from the state of making humans out of clay. He put down the clay figurine in his hand, then stood up and looked at the surrounding scene. It turned out that, unknowingly, there were already a lot of clay figurines, and they could be seen in his eyes. Retracting his gaze from the clay figurines, Foam turned his head to look in the direction of the sea. There was a huge wave there, as if it was covering the sky and the earth, crushing towards the side. That wave was 100 feet high. If it was allowed to crash down, all the clay figurines would be burned under the waves. Seeing this, with a wave of his windbreaker sleeves, endless astral winds blasted out, forcibly shattering the oncoming waves. The waves were shattered. Countless amounts of seawater smashed down, immediately causing a lot of waves. Just as these aftershocks were still coming towards the sea, Foam didn't move at all. Only the aura on his body was emitted, and it blocked all the aftershocks. It was calm for less than a breath's time. The calm surface of the sea suddenly parted, as if a divine weapon had divided the entire surface of the sea. The moment the sea separated, a heaven-shaking dragon roar came from the depths of the sea. In the next moment, a 30,000-meter-long true dragon soared into the sky and circled around. "Where did you come from? How dare you come to my dragon sea area and act so impudently?" The true dragon spoke in human language, its cold gaze landing on Foam. Ever since he was born, he had been the overlord of this ocean. No living being dared to go against him. This time, he was just playing around in the sea as usual, but a living being had interfered with him. One could imagine how angry the true dragon was. In addition to his previous status, this made him even more arrogant when facing the wind. In the face of questioning, Feng's expression remained the same. He said indifferently, "I am Foam of the human race, and I am creating humans here. If the waves come, they will destroy my work, which is why I am stopping them. If I have offended you in any way, please forgive me." Human style? Doubt flashed across the true dragon's eyes, but he didn't pursue the matter further. He didn't know much about the human race. But that didn't stop him from looking at Foam with disdain. "The sea area is where we dragons live. The land within 1,000,000 miles of the sea area is the territory of us dragons. You are a human, and you dare to trespass without my permission. Leave quickly, and I will let you go. Otherwise, I will take you down and fill the sea area with you to suppress the eye of the sea." The true dragon's voice was frighteningly cold. He could sense that Foam wasn't weak. If Foam was willing to leave, the true dragon wouldn't want to waste his energy. But if Foam insisted on not leaving, as the overlord of the sea area, he wouldn't be merciful. Facing the true dragon's tyranny, Feng's expression turned solemn. I didn't know that the sea area was the territory of the dragons. But this matter concerns the birth of the human race, so I need to stay here for a while. After this matter, I will definitely give you some compensation.
I hope you can accommodate me.
Either you leave or you die. The true dragon circled above the sea area, his 10,000-meter-long body covering the sky. Under the refraction of the sun, his pale golden scales emitted a dazzling light. In his amber eyes, there was a faint golden color. Along with his anger, the sea surface, which wasn't calm to begin with, was now swept by wind and waves, causing the entire sea area to shake violently. Waves after waves. They surged towards other areas. Feng stood with his hands behind his back. The aura on his body spread out, isolating all the waves outside. You really won't give me face? Who do you think you are? You don't deserve my respect. The true dragon sneered. He didn't hide his disdain for Feng. As the overlord of the sea area for many years, the creatures who were originally in the territory of the dragons were either expelled or completely surrendered to him. There was no one who dared to talk to him with such an attitude. Therefore, the true dragon was very dissatisfied with him. As soon as he finished speaking, the wind on the sea became more and more violent. In the next moment, huge waves rose up, sweeping towards Feng like a wild dragon, accompanied by endless dragon roars. Seeing this, Feng's eyes suddenly turned cold. He took a step forward, and the void under his feet rippled. With a simple palm, it seemed to cover the world. The wild dragon formed by the waves was instantly annihilated by a single palm strike.
Not only that,
the remaining power of the palm continued to suppress the true dragon. Feeling the power of the palm, the true dragon became serious. He slapped out with his claws, forcibly shattering the palm. The two fought. Just by the leakage of the aftershocks, it was as if doomsday had arrived, causing the sky to darken. On the boundless surface of the sea, huge waves surged endlessly. Countless waves surged in all directions, attempting to drown everything. Mountains collapsed, and the earth was submerged. Only the place where the clay figurines were was protected by a layer of mysterious power, preventing them from being affected by the aftershocks. The battle broke out very suddenly, and the commotion was abnormally big. Qin Shujian, who had been observing the creation of the clay figurines, also silently watched the battle. To be honest, when his gaze fell on the sea area, he had already noticed the true dragon in the sea area. However, noticing was one thing. Qin Shujian also didn't expect that the true dragon would stop him at this time. In this regard, he had nothing to say. If the human race wanted to be born, they had to go through a tribulation. Now that the true dragon was stopping them, it could be considered a tribulation. As for whether Feng would be a match for the true dragon, Qin Shujian wasn't too worried. Based on the current situation, although the true dragon was powerful compared to Feng, there was still a gap. If the battle continued, there was almost no chance of Feng losing. Chapter 8:22. The battle was still ongoing. Both of them were very powerful, and the aftermath spread out, covering thousands of miles of land. Although Feng had not been engrossed in cultivation these years, his cultivation had been increasing day by day.
until now,
He had already reached the celestial limit. As for the true dragon's strength, it was also at the celestial limit. But in terms of foundation, there was a certain gap between him and Feng. In a short period of time, nothing could be seen, but as time passed, the gap widened. Boom! Another collision occurred. The void distorted violently, and the true dragon let out a painful dragon roar. The pale golden scales were actually shattered by Feng's punch, and blood flowed down the broken scales. Then he fell towards the sea. Feng stepped on the void, his expression stern, and raised his hand to punch out, landing on the true dragon's body. It was fine if he did not attack, but since he really attacked, he had to eliminate all future troubles. Otherwise, when the other party's strength increased in the future, it might cause him a lot of trouble. It could be said that the current Feng had the determination to kill the true dragon. That undisguised killing intent. It also made the true dragon feel apprehensive. He wants to kill me. In an instant, the true dragon understood Feng's thoughts, and the alarm in his heart went crazy. Although he was the overlord of the sea, it did not mean that he was not afraid of death. Originally, he dared to be arrogant because he had absolute confidence in his own strength and disdain for Feng.
But now, fighting until now.
The true dragon also understood how big the gap in strength between the two sides was. If he really wanted to fight to the death, he would definitely die, and Feng would at most suffer some injuries. Losing his life for a small matter was obviously not worth it. With the mentality that where there was life, there was hope. After the true dragon took Feng's punch, he followed the force and fell into the sea, and then escaped into the depths. Wanna leave? How can it be so easy? Seeing that the true dragon was about to leave, Feng of course would not let him escape. If he did not completely eliminate this future trouble, it would definitely be a problem in the future. But when he went deep into the sea, the true dragon had completely disappeared. Considering that he was not used to and familiar with the sea, he hesitated for a moment and then jumped out of the sea, giving up on chasing the true dragon. Back to the sea. He removed the energy barrier that he had set up. All the clay figurines were unharmed in the battle. He looked at the clay figurines in front of him. Feng gave up on making more clay figurines. After being disturbed by the true dragon, he had already retreated from that mysterious state. When he looked at the clay figurine again, he had a troubled expression on his face. It shouldn't be wrong to create a human out of clay. Otherwise, I wouldn't have entered a state of harmony with heaven and earth when I was creating the clay figurines. Just this alone proves that I didn't take the wrong path. But why is it that even though the clay figurines have been successfully created, no humans have been born? Feng looked at the clay figurines, his mind filled with thoughts. He was certain. The path that he had chosen was definitely not wrong. This was because when he was creating the clay figurines earlier, the unseen connection made Feng understand that his path was correct. If he hadn't taken the right path, why would he have entered the state of harmony with the heavens and the earth? In other words, his path was right, or rather, his first step was right. If creating a human from clay is the first step, then what is the second step? Feng looked puzzled. He casually picked up a clay figurine and saw that the soil on it had gradually dried up as time passed. The palm-sized clay figurines were lifelike. However, there was no sign of life on it. No matter how beautiful the clay figurine is, it is still a dead object. Because it lacks life, it can't transform into a real living being. Whether it is a palm-sized clay figurine or a taller and bigger one, it is all the same. Unless it can be endowed with life and flesh, it is absolutely impossible to transform into a real living being. But how can a clay figurine be endowed with life and flesh? Feng's thoughts gradually moved towards a certain direction, and his eyes gradually brightened. If creating a human from clay was not wrong, then the clay figurine in front of him was correct. In short, the clay figurine must be the predecessor of the human race. But the problem was that the human race was a living being, while the clay figurine was a dead object. To turn a clay figurine into a human, he had to at least cross the barrier between life and death. In other words, he had to turn the clay figurine from a dead object into a real living being. After reaching that step, there would be a chance for a new human race to be born. However, it was easy to create a clay figurine, but endowing a dead object with life was an extremely difficult task. At least in Feng's memory, he didn't remember such a method. His thoughts were stuck in a dilemma. Feng simply sat down and entered a state of meditation. On the other side, the true dragon that escaped from the sea had unknowingly returned to his original position. Through the sea surface, he could see Feng sitting on the sea surface, deep in thought. A pair of huge amber eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. After being the overlord of the sea for so many years, the true dragon had never encountered anything like this before. Ever since he was born, he had fought dozens of battles of all sizes. Let's not talk about running away. Even if he was at a disadvantage, it was something that had never happened before. Human Feng, this is not over between us. Wait until I break through to the true immortal realm. I will take your life. The true dragon's heart was cold, and he did not hide his killing intent. After a long time, the true dragon gradually dived into the sea and disappeared completely. Although he wanted to kill Feng, he had to admit that with his current strength, there was still a gap between him and the other party. Unless he broke through to the true immortal realm. Otherwise, if they were to fight, the possibility of him dying was higher. For his own safety, the true dragon would not take the risk easily. Unless he broke through to the true immortal realm, he would not easily seek revenge on Feng. Anyway, this grudge had already been formed. When there was a chance in the future, he would definitely settle the score. When the true dragon retreated, Feng also raised his head slightly, looking at the sea with a cold gaze. Then he fell into deep thought again. The true dragon had quietly returned. He also sensed it, but he did not reveal any clues. Not only that, Feng purposely put on a defenseless posture, trying to lure the other party into attacking. Then, when the other party attacked to kill him, he would explode and kill him. Unfortunately, the true dragon was too cautious. Even so, he did not attack on his own accord. Instead, he quietly retreated. He missed an opportunity to eliminate the root of the problem. Although Feng felt that it was a pity, he did not care too much about it. The current him, his heart and soul were still on how to create the human race. How to turn a dead clay figurine into a living being with flesh and blood. This was a difficult problem. Chapter 8:23. The biggest difference between a living being and an inanimate being is their vitality and flesh. But how do I create vitality and flesh and become a true living being? Feng's eyes were drifting, memories kept surging in his mind. He had traveled all over the world and seen many things. If heaven and earth could give him the answer, then he would be able to get what he wanted by flipping through his memories. Time slowly passed. After a long time, Feng's eyes focused again. When he was thinking about how to turn an inanimate being into a living being, he thought of Eldar. Before an Eldar became an Eldar, they were just simple plants. To a certain extent, although they weren't inanimate beings, they were no different from inanimate beings and couldn't reach the level of living beings. Plants aren't truly inanimate beings because they have vitality, but they don't have flesh and blood and intelligence, so they can't be considered living beings. No. Feng shook his head and overturned his original thoughts. He always thought that the difference between living beings and inanimate beings was their flesh and blood. But now that he thought about it, the biggest difference between living beings and inanimate beings was their intelligence. Only those who had intelligence could be considered as living beings. Plants didn't have intelligence and clay men didn't have intelligence either, so they couldn't be considered living beings. This way, Feng suddenly had some ideas. For plants to become Eldar, the biggest prerequisite is to have intelligence, and the prerequisite for that is to breathe in and out spirit energy. In other words, the first step to becoming a living being is to breathe in and out spirit energy. Spirit energy is the source of all things in the world. When any living being is born, they need to rely on spirit energy to survive. For a clay man to become a living being, it must have spirit energy. Thinking of this, something seemed to be emerging in Feng's mind, and a mysterious aura descended. Spirit energy. How to make a clay man breathe in and out spirit energy. Or rather, how to make a clay man have spirit energy. Feng was excited. He felt that he had reached an important juncture and understood the key to the birth of the human race. As long as he could solve the problem of how to make a clay man have spirit energy or breathe in and out spirit energy, then the human race would be born. Thinking of this, coupled with the mysterious guidance from the unseen world, Feng's thoughts moved many times faster than before. It did not take long. He thought of a solution. The simplest way to give the clay figurines spiritual energy is to soak them in spiritual energy and let them transform. With a wave of his hand, Feng absorbed the drifting spiritual chi of the world and infused it into the clay figurine in his hand. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Time passed, but the clay figurine didn't change at all. Foam waved his hand again, dispersing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that he had pulled over. There was a confused look on his face. My train of thought should be correct, but why can't the gathered spiritual chi transform the clay figurines? Could it be that the concentration of spiritual chi is not enough? That's right. Maybe it's because the concentration of spiritual energy here isn't high enough. In Feng's opinion, the only problem left was the density of the spiritual energy. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth was the origin of all living beings, but it was definitely not the richest spiritual chi. This point, Feng was certain. After all, having cultivated to his level, he naturally had the vision that he should have. If the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is not dense enough, then what other things can have denser spiritual chi? He was still going through his memories.
Soon.
Feng stretched out his palm, only to see the skin on the tip of his index finger split open and a drop of bright blood condensed. The moment the blood appeared, a vast power spread out. Along with the power spread, there was also a monstrous spiritual chi looming. If there is something more dense than the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, then the flesh and blood of an expert is one of them. Since I was born, I have absorbed a lot of spiritual chi of heaven and earth. My cultivation has reached the limit of the celestial being realm, and the vast amount of spiritual chi in my blood is not something that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth can compare to. If spiritual chi is the key to transforming dead things, then using my blood, there is a high possibility of success. While Feng was thinking, the blood on his index finger dripped directly on the clay figurine in his other hand. The moment the blood fell on the clay figurine was directly impacted by the power of the blood, turning into dust and scattering.
Seeing this,
Feng's face was not discouraged. Instead, there was a look of excitement. This was because the moment the clay figurine crumbled into dust, he felt a flash of vitality that disappeared in an instant. From this, it could be seen. His blood could really give life to the clay figurine. The only problem was, the power of his blood was too tyrannical, and it was not something that these ordinary clay figurines could withstand. As long as this problem was solved, then the human race could be born. Immediately, Feng forced out another drop of blood from his index finger. But this time, he did not directly drip the blood onto a clay figurine. Instead, he used his vital essence to control it, dividing the blood into hundreds and thousands of pieces in the air. A drop of blood, after being divided, directly turned into a tiny thread. The vital essence in his right hand floated up, holding the thread formed by the blood. Foam calmed his mind and slowly controlled the thread to fly towards the surrounding clay figurines. Just as the thread was about to touch the clay figurine, his mind suddenly became highly concentrated. The gentle vital essence wrapped those clay figurines and then controlled the thread bit by bit, fusing it into the clay figurine. The whole process was very slow. The thread seemed to extend infinitely, endlessly converging towards the clay figurine. Unlike the clay figurine before, which directly turned into dust, this time, after being wrapped by the vital essence and being divided by the blood, although the clay figurine shook slightly, it did not directly shatter like before. Half a day passed. The blood thread fused into the clay figurine. The free spiritual energy between heaven and earth seemed to be attracted by something, gathering towards those clay figurines.
slowly,
Those lifeless clay figurines seemed to be breathing, their chests rising and falling slightly, absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At this time, the blood thread completely fused. Foam retracted his palm, and his highly concentrated mind suddenly relaxed. When he looked at those clay figurines again, there was a smile on his face. When the clay figurines were absorbing the spiritual energy, he understood that everything he did was right. Although the clay figurines absorbing the spiritual energy was only the first step of transforming from a lifeless object into a living creature, as long as the step was taken, the following things would be much easier. Looking at those clay figurines, Phone did not do anything else, and just stood at the side and watched slowly. On the other side, the clay figurine absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, as if it was a living creature breathing. Its originally palm-sized body also began to gradually grow under the constant replenishment of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. P.S. Support the original version, Chidian Chinese Network, app, Chidian Book. I am upright. Chapter 8:24. They were nurtured by Feng's blood. The clay figurines swallowed the spirit energy of heaven and earth and were born with surging vitality. The spirit energy of heaven and earth that swarmed over became denser and denser, wrapping around the clay figurines.
Soon,
The spirit energy was so dense that the clay figurines could not be seen at all, if one looked from afar. The clay figurines wrapped in spirit energy were more like huge cocoons. A few hours passed. The spirit energy suddenly spread out, as if a butterfly had broken out of its cocoon. One by one, humans walked out. The humans who walked out of the spirit energy cocoon were all sturdy. There were men and women, but they all looked young. Those humans walked out in front of Feng.
then,
They bowed down. "Greetings, Father God." Hearing this, Feng revealed a gratified smile. He could feel the throbbing of his bloodline from these humans. Because the birth of these humans was because of the fusion of his blood, they were of the same origin.
then,
Feng looked at the other clay figurines. The humans that were born now only occupied a small portion of the clay figurines. There were more clay figurines waiting to be transformed. With the first experience, this time, he was much more comfortable. More blood gushed out from his hand. Under the control of his vital essence, it turned into countless bloodlines and merged into the remaining clay figurines.
soon,
Those clay figurines that had merged with the bloodlines also began to swallow the spirit energy of heaven and earth. Not long after, the clay figurines broke out of the spirit energy cocoon and turned into humans. The moment those humans saw Feng, they all bowed and called out to Father God.
for them,
Feng was the existence that created them and had absolute respect for him. At this moment, all the clay figurines had already transformed into humans. Feng looked at those humans and felt something in his heart. The aura on his body suddenly became erratic. He took a step forward, and his body was already flying in the air. The illusory law river under his feet surged, setting off his entire body. Then, the mother stream, which was hidden from view, also spanned across the sky. Feng raised his head and looked at the Law Mother River. He did not walk into it. Instead, he stretched out his hand and forcefully tore the Law Mother River apart. Then he pulled out one of the laws. The Law River was pulled out. Thunder rumbled between heaven and earth, and countless lightning snakes flashed crazily.
seeing this,
Feng was not afraid at all. He forcefully fused the long river of laws that had been pulled out into his body. Bearing the rules, sanctification of the flesh. The rules fused into his body, and an earth-shattering change immediately took place. The sky suddenly exploded, and the world was instantly enraged at this moment. In the next instant, monstrous lightning struck down in the face of those thunderbolts. The wind did not stop the lightning at all. It allowed the lightning to reach its body and explode its flesh. However, the moment his flesh exploded, a rich vitality emerged from his body and healed his injuries in the blink of an eye. Thunderbolts descended one after another. The huge commotion also attracted the attention of other experts. Ever since Jianmu became an immortal, no other expert had become an immortal. Immortal Ascension Tribulation. It was like a flash in the pan. Now that the tribulation of ascension that had disappeared for many years had reappeared, it naturally attracted the attention of many powerhouses. The true dragon lurking in the sea immediately sensed the changes in the sky above the sea. When it looked up, it happened to see Feng withstanding the lightning tribulation with his physical body. He's undergoing tribulation to become an immortal. Impossible. How could he become an immortal so quickly? The true dragon's eyes were filled with disbelief. Feng's tribulation to become an immortal was completely unexpected. Feng's strength was indeed strong, but it was impossible for him to become an immortal so easily. However, the truth was right in front of him, and he had to believe it even if he did not want to. With that thought in mind, the true dragon's eyes were filled with killing intent. If Feng were to undergo tribulation to become an immortal, it might pose a fatal threat to him. Right now, there were only two paths in front of him. He could either dive deeper into the sea, or let Feng fail his tribulation. Looking at the lightning tribulation falling from the sky, the true dragon was ready to stop it. However, just as he was about to make a move, a great terror descended from the unseen world, causing him to stop in his tracks. He would die. The true dragon's eyes were filled with deep fear. Just as he was about to attack, he had a premonition of the future. If he really attacked by force, perhaps Feng would fail his tribulation, but he would definitely die under the lightning tribulation. Immediately, the killing intent in the true dragon's eyes dissipated. After glancing at Feng, who was undergoing tribulation, he dived into the depths of the sea. Since he could not stop the other party from undergoing tribulation, in that case, it would be best to leave first. Otherwise, if Feng really succeeded in his tribulation, he was not confident that he could survive in his hands. In order to preserve his life and slowly take his revenge in the future, the true dragon did not have the thought of confronting Feng head-on for the time being. On the other side, Feng was completely immersed in the lightning tribulation. He did not care about the things in the outside world at all. He only operated his own qi and blood cultivation method to withstand the lightning tribulation. As the first batch of living beings in the world, Feng's cultivation method was created when he walked the world and matched his own advantages. Especially after he understood that he had to withstand the lightning tribulation to become an immortal. Furthermore, he had made certain improvements to his cultivation technique. His current cultivation method, it was mainly to temper his physical body. While enduring the lightning tribulation, Feng was also further refining his cultivation method. Time passed. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. When the last lightning tribulation fell, a vast and boundless power was emitted from Feng's body, instantly sweeping through the world. At the same time, golden flowers scattered in the sky, golden lotuses bloomed on the ground. It showed the birth of the second true immortal. Feng, who had completely become an immortal, was now standing in the air. His heart was full of pride. Looking at the tribulation clouds in the sky that had not completely dissipated, he spoke loudly. I am Feng. From today onwards, I will establish the human race. Anyone who has my bloodline will be part of the human race. As soon as he finished speaking, there was another explosion in the world. The vast expanse of purple qi surged over from the horizon, scattering all the tribulation clouds that had yet to disperse on their own. In the next second, the purple qi surrounded his body. The aura on Feng's body rose steadily. Soon, it broke the original barrier and reached a new height. He succeeded. In the mountain range, a face appeared on the Jianmu. His gaze seemed to be able to pass through billions of miles of space and directly see the scene of the sea. Early when Feng was undergoing the tribulation to become an immortal, he had already noticed it. Now that the human race was established, the world congratulated it, and the sound spread throughout the world. The Jianmu naturally knew about it.
To be honest,
he did not expect that Feng could create the human race in such a short time. After all, creating a race was not such an easy thing. Creating Eldar by himself was a ready-made bargain. If one wanted to create a race from nothing, even the Jianmu tree was not 100% confident that it could do so. Chapter 8:25. His spiritual will withdrew from his inner world. Qin Shujian, who was sitting motionlessly on his seat, finally came back to his senses.
Until now,
in his mind, there was still the scene of Feng creating the human race and transcending the tribulation to become an immortal. It could be said that observing the birth of the human race made Qin Shujian, who was a human himself, have many insights in his heart. These insights, They would not be directly converted into strength, but they could allow his state of mind to rise to another level on the original foundation. In a short period of time, such changes would not be seen. But as time passed, slowly it would play a role. However, what really surprised Qin Shujian was the way Feng finally became an immortal. Normally speaking, if a cultivator wanted to walk the path of physical sanctification, they would shatter the rules and then absorb a piece of the rule fragment. With this rule fragment, they would completely transform and break through to the perfected immortal realm. But Feng was different. He did not enter the mother river of rules, nor did he open up the battlefield of rules. Instead, he relied on his own strength to forcefully absorb a complete rule. One had to know. The first 8 levels of the perfected immortal realm were all perfecting and repairing the rules. Only when one reached the 9th level of the perfected immortal realm would one truly master a complete rule. In other words, when Feng absorbed the complete rule, when he broke through to the perfected immortal realm, in terms of realm, he was already a 9th level immortal. However, the rules of the inner world were all in the state of a seed. They could not be compared to the vast and complete rules of the great wide world. Therefore, Feng had the realm of a 9th level immortal, but his strength was far from the level of a 9th level immortal. To be honest, he should be the weakest 9th level immortal in history. Because, in Qin Shujian's opinion, when he broke through, his strength was around the 2nd level of the perfected immortal realm. However, after establishing the human race and receiving the reward of the world, his strength had soared to the 5th level of the perfected immortal realm. Compared to shattering the rules of the great wide world, absorbing a complete rule, and then using one's own methods to expand it, the difficulty of breaking through will be higher. However, his strength will also be more powerful. Qin Shujian shook his head. The disadvantages of this approach were obvious, but the advantages were also obvious. He was also a perfected immortal with a physical sanctification. If other people had broken through to immortality, their strength would be at the 1st level of immortality. However, Feng had gained the strength of a 2nd level immortal the moment he became an immortal, which was enough to suppress other immortals. Furthermore, once the other party expanded the laws to a certain extent, their chances of breaking through to the Dao fruit realm would be much higher than breaking the laws and ascending to immortality. Basically, the disadvantage of ascending to immortality this way was only the part that was developed in the middle. Once one fully adapted to it in the later stages, the advantage would be even more obvious. It's a pity that this method of immortal ascension can only be carried out in an inner world or a newly born world. If it were any other mature world, there would be no way to do it. After all, a truly complete set of rules was far too powerful. It was impossible for a body that could not withstand the tribulation to bear the complete laws. If you really do that by force, there's a high probability, no, 100% chance that your physical body will collapse, and you'll die under the power of the rules. With Qin Shujian's experience, it was easy for him to see the drawbacks. How could it be so easy to carry a complete set of laws? Without a strong enough physical body, it was impossible to bear the weight, unless the rules were weak enough. That was why there was the principle of breaking the rules and intercepting the fragments to become an immortal. Any system was established by countless predecessors one after another, and then tidied up and perfected step by step until it was widely spread. It was impossible to become a big fatty in one bite. A few epochs ago, there was a huge commotion. There were experts who forcefully carried a complete set of rules and ended up dying. With the lesson learned from the past, it was unknown how many experts had died before this drawback was perfected. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian focused again and recalled what had happened just now. If he was not wrong, the law that Feng followed should be the newly born human Tao law. In other words, the path that Feng followed was actually the same as Zhao Huang. However, as the human ancestor, Feng's understanding of the human Tao law was not something that Zhao Huang could compare to. When Feng attained the Tao and became an immortal, he completely absorbed the human Tao law. In other words, heaven and earth lost the human Tao law forever. However, this is not absolute. As long as Feng exists in heaven and earth, heaven and earth will naturally derive the human Tao law again according to the path that he took. Moreover, the human Tao law of heaven and earth will grow correspondingly to the number of human Tao law that foam created. Thinking about it this way, it's a good thing. Qin Shu Jian was in a good mood. The rules would not really disappear. As long as heaven and earth existed, the rules would exist. Foam became an immortal, although he carried the human Tao law. Since he existed in heaven and earth could still give birth to new human Tao law. Now that the human race had appeared, the rules were further perfected, and the inner world had become even stronger. Accordingly, as the ruler of the inner world, Qin Shujian's strength had also grown a little from the original foundation. Moreover, because he was a human himself, he had no choice but to accept it. This increase. They were much stronger than when the spirit race had first been born. Qin Shujian's mind sank into his body. He could clearly feel that his strength was steadily increasing. After the evolution of heaven and earth, his body was basically a shell of its former self. His internal organs no longer existed. It was just an evolved heaven and earth. Endless energy was being emitted from his inner world at every moment, replenishing Qin Shujian's body. This allowed his physical body to maintain a balanced state, and at the same time, it was steadily improving. If this situation was seen by others, they would undoubtedly be greatly shocked. But for Qin Shujian, his current situation couldn't be any more normal. Since the human race appeared, my strength has taken another step forward from the 9th heaven immortal realm. However, I'm still a little short of reaching the half-step Tao fruit realm. Unless a few more races appear and perfect the rules. When that time comes, I can truly reach the half-step Tao fruit realm. Once he reached the half-step Tao fruit realm, Qin Shujian was confident that he could sweep away the 3 major Void Fiend clans. Now Eldar and the human race had appeared. It would not take too long for the remaining races to appear. No matter what, there were 2 factors in front of him. As long as he imitated them, it would not be difficult for the other races to appear. After calming his mind, Qin Shujian sat upright on the throne and began to digest the insights he had gained from observing the birth of the human race. These insights were not fleeting, but if he did not digest them and allowed them to absorb them on their own, there would not be much that could be converted. In order to avoid wasting them, he would rather spend some time converting and absorbing them completely. Chapter 8:26. The next day.
Court meeting.
The gods stood in great numbers. It had been a long time since the last imperial court meeting. This was because Qin Shujian also needed to go into seclusion to increase his strength. It was impossible for him to hold court meetings every day to discuss so many things. Moreover, there weren't so many things that needed to be discussed every day. Moreover, the gods also needed to cultivate. It was impossible for them to hold court meetings almost every day like mortals. Every minor court meeting, Qin Shujian would inform everyone through the investiture of the gods so that the gods could make preparations. After all the immortals and gods had arrived, Qin Shujian sat on the throne and said calmly, "Everyone, if you have something to report, you may leave the court." As soon as he finished speaking, an immortal god stepped out and cupped his hands. "Emperor of Heaven, the demon abyss is approaching. Many cultivators of the myriad races have accidentally entered the range of the demon abyss and been devoured by it. So far, many cultivators have died. Among them, a true immortal died at the hands of the demon abyss. Because the demon abyss was approaching, it was getting closer and closer to the battlefield. Gradually, there were already many cultivators who encountered the demon abyss when they went out to train. Those who were lucky were able to escape when they encountered the demon abyss. But those who were unlucky died at the hands of the demon abyss. Even an existence as strong as a true immortal had a slim chance of survival when encountering the demon abyss. After all, the saying that the demon abyss was a dangerous place was not just a saying. If there was no way to keep a true immortal, what right did it have to be called a dangerous place? Qin Shujian said, There's no need to pay attention to the matters of the demon abyss. This is the general trend, and no one can stop it. Warn the cultivators of the myriad races not to enter the demon abyss again. In the future, the heavenly court will deal with the 3 great clans and consolidate their strength to fight the demon abyss. Hearing this, the immortal god retreated. Qin Shujian shifted his gaze and looked at Emperor Zhao. Emperor Zhongyuan, how is the recruitment of the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals? Emperor of Heaven, more than 100,000 heavenly soldiers have been recruited. There are currently a total of 1,000 heavenly generals. They are still in the process of selection. Emperor Zhao stepped out and replied truthfully. Qin Shujian nodded slightly. 100,000 heavenly soldiers was actually quite a large number. After all, those who could become celestial soldiers were all at the 4th tier of the celestial human realm and above. 100,000 celestial soldiers represented at least 100,000 saints. Before the heavenly court was established, 100,000 saints. Even if all the saints of the 10,000 races were added together, they would not have such a number. Not to mention, a saint who could become a celestial soldier was much stronger than the average saint. To put it simply, these 100,000 saints were the cream of the crop. As for the 1,000 celestial generals, they were equivalent to 1,000 peak celestial being experts. They could be said to be the reserves of true immortals. Furthermore, those who could become heavenly generals were all experts on Zhou Tian's war general role. Every cultivator who entered Zhou Tian's war general list was an expert among experts. Their chances of breaking through to the true immortal realm in the future were much higher than other cultivators who did not enter the list. 720 Zhou Tian's general ranking list. All cultivators who entered the heavenly court and became heavenly generals would have their names disappear from the war general ranking. It was also because of this. Only the latecomers could continue to enter the war general ranking list. In this way, one could imagine how strong the 1,000 heavenly generals were. 100,000 heavenly soldiers and 1,000 heavenly generals have been successfully recruited. The heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals can be considered to have formed a preliminary scale. You all need to practice the array formation that I passed down. At the same time, do you all have anything to say about the heavenly law? Qin Shujian paused for a moment and changed the topic to the heavenly law. Earlier on, he had already mentioned the heavenly rule. But after so long, there had been no court meeting, so the matter of the heavenly law was temporarily put aside. Now that the court meeting was held, thus, this matter was brought up again. In the end, the heavenly law was related to the order of the heavenly court. There could not be any carelessness, or it would not be conducive to the subsequent management of the heavenly court. Hearing this, the gods looked at each other and no one spoke easily. They did not know what Qin Shujian was thinking, so they did not dare to interfere with the heavenly law. It would be bad if what they said was different from what the other party thought. The scene. They fell silent. When Qin Shujian saw this, he spoke again. None of you have any objections, but I have compiled some heavenly laws these days. Why don't you all take a look at them? As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves. Countless streams of light shot out, and before the gods could react, they entered their minds. In an instant, the gods fell into a daze. After a few breaths, they gradually woke up from their daze. Heavenly law. Emperor Zhao silently digested the memories in his mind, and his eyes flickered slightly. Those streams of light contained the information of the heavenly law. After digesting those memories, he realized that the number of heavenly laws that Qin Shujian gave him was actually not much. There were only a few. However, these heavenly rules contained a lot of things. With Emperor Zhao's status, he could naturally see the main message. These heavenly laws. It was nothing more than to consolidate the position of the heavenly court and make all races submit to the heavenly court without any possibility of disobedience. Emperor Zhao did not have any objections to this. At this moment, the other immortals and gods had also digested the memories of the heavenly laws. There were different expressions on their faces, but just like before, no one spoke easily. Qin Shujian looked down at the gods and said indifferently, "Do you have any objections?" These heavenly laws were selected by him after combining them with the heavenly laws of the Third Era. It was relatively popular, but there was nothing wrong with it. Hearing this, the gods looked at each other and saw the same thing in each other's eyes.
Then,
They all bowed. There is no problem with the heavenly laws set by the Emperor of Heaven. We have no objections.
good.
Qin Shujian nodded and said in a deep voice, "Since you have no objections, the heavenly laws will be officially implemented from today onwards. All cultivators of the great wide world must abide by the heavenly laws. No cultivator is allowed to violate them. Anyone who violates them will be severely punished. In order to make the heavenly laws sufficiently intimidating, I will refine a supreme treasure to imprison cultivators who trigger the heavenly laws." "We obey." The gods bowed again. Judging from the current heavenly laws, although it was not beneficial to the various races, it was not harmful either. If it was established, so be it. As for the rest, they would have to wait until the future. However, they were also a little curious. That was exactly what kind of supreme treasure Qin Shujian was going to refine. When the heavenly mirror and the Tiandi bell appeared, the gods had already refreshed their understanding of the Emperor of Heaven. They knew that Qin Shujian's forging methods were extraordinary, but they had never thought that the forging methods of this celestial emperor would be tyrannical to such an extent. Chapter 8:27. The heavenly law was established. There were no accidents. Qin Shujian picked up the imperial insignia and directly imprinted it on the investiture of the gods. In an instant, streams of light overflowed from the investiture of the gods. The corresponding information also appeared in the minds of the gods. The heavenly law has been established. I hope that all of you will abide by it and set an example. Those who violate the heavenly law will be punished at the very least. Those who violate the heavenly law will be stripped of their deity position, beaten down to the mortal world, or even killed. In addition, I also want to set up the immortal slaying platform. Anyone who seriously violates the heavenly law will walk on the immortal slaying platform. I don't want you to be on the immortal slaying platform in the future." Qin Shujian said calmly. The gods lowered their heads in silence. They were not worried that they would walk on the immortal slaying platform. Instead, they were more concerned about whether the immortal slaying platform would mean that the heavenly court would have another deity position if it was established. Just as the gods were thinking about it, Xiong stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Emperor of Heaven, the gods of the heavenly court have their own duties now. If the immortal slaying platform is established, will a new deity position be born?" "That's right." Qin Shujian nodded. Xiong said, "The Emperor of Heaven once promised me a deity position. I wonder if the deity position on the immortal slaying platform will count." "Of course." Qin Shujian smiled faintly. "You want to exchange this opportunity for the deity position on the immortal slaying platform, but I wonder who you want to give this deity position to? You have to know that the deity position on the immortal slaying platform is not as good as Zhou Tian's constellation, but it is not something that ordinary cultivators can bear. And because the immortal slaying platform will be a place to kill immortals in the future, it will be accompanied by a monstrous evil aura. If you can't suppress the evil aura, you will die in the future." The level of the deity position on the immortal slaying platform was not high. But to bear this deity position was not something that ordinary cultivators could do. Especially the evil aura that could kill immortals. If one's strength was not enough, it would be easy for the evil aura to erode one's mind. When the time came, it might be the result of death. Shi Yang's expression remained unchanged as he cupped his fists and said, "Emperor of Heaven, don't worry. The human race has bright vision." General Dan Hao. In the past, he fought for the human race and killed countless enemies. Now, he had reached the limits of the celestial being. Although he had not broken through to the true immortal realm, he was once ranked on Zhou Tian's general ranking. Now, he was one of the heavenly generals. Regardless of strength or experience, he believed that it would not be a problem for him to take up the position of a deity on the immortal slaying stage. As for the baleful aura mentioned by the Emperor of Heaven, Dan Hao can also suppress it. Dan Hao. Qin Shujian's eyes flickered. As early as when Xiang stepped forward, he had already thought about who the other party was trying to obtain the deity position. If it was Dan Hao, then it would make sense. Of the 5 generals of the Great Zhao, not many were still alive. Of them, Dan Hao was the strongest. Long before the human race left the eastern continent, the other party was already a 6th-level celestial being expert. Now, his strength had increased by quite a bit. It was just as Xiang had said. Even though Dan Hao had yet to break through to the true immortal realm, he was still a step away from it. Just as Xiang was speaking, the expressions of the other gods changed slightly. They could also understand that the deity position of a deity on the immortal slaying stage was definitely not ordinary. Until now, the human race had a total of 4 people holding the deity position in the heavenly court. Putting aside Ningbo, who was ranked last for the time being, he did not even have the qualifications to enter the court. However, he was the disciple of the Emperor of Heaven. Needless to say, his future prospects were great. Except for Ningbo. Xiang was the head of the Zhou Tian constellation, Xiao Qingfeng was the head of the 4 war gods, and Emperor Zhao Xiying Tian was the head of the 5 imperial emperors. It could be said that the human race's power in the heavenly court was already too strong. At this moment, if the human race had another deity position, then the human race's power in the heavenly court would become even stronger. Under the subtle influence, the possibility of the immortals and gods of the other races wanting to compete with the human race was very slim. Although the tens of thousands of races were peaceful now and there were no battles, that was because Qin Shujian, the Emperor of Heaven, was in charge. There were also the void demons and the external threats of the demon abyss that made the situation stable. When the external threats were resolved, there would be internal conflicts. When that time came, even with the Emperor of Heaven's suppression, there might be undercurrents. However, although they did not want the human race to obtain the deity position of the immortal slaying stage, the other party did have a spot in his hands. There was no reason for others to fight for it. In the eyes of these immortals and gods, the only one who had a chance to snatch the deity position of the human race was the West Spirit Emperor, Si Hanhai. Even though Si Hanhai was also born in the human race, he had already parted ways with the human race after he created the demon race. When Xiang had obtained a deity position, the West Spirit Emperor also had a deity position in his hands. If the other party used this deity position to compete with the human race, then it was very likely that the human race would not be able to obtain the deity position of the immortal slaying stage. There were thoughts in his mind. Many immortals and gods looked at Si Hanhai, who was standing in front of them silently. At the same time, Xiang also glanced at Si Hanhai from the corner of his eyes. In his opinion, now, the only one who could compete with the human race for the deity position was this West Spirit Emperor. Xiang knew very well that the other immortals and gods of the heavenly court did not want the human race to obtain this deity position. But they did not want it. With the means of those immortals and gods, there was no possibility of stopping him. Now, the only one who could make him fail on the verge of success was Si Hanhai. Under the watchful eyes of the gods, Si Hanhai smiled faintly and did not speak, nor did he show any intention of competing for the deity position. Immediately, some immortals and gods could not help but speak. Reporting to the Emperor of Heaven, the demon race was born with the killing of heaven and earth. In my opinion, the deity position of the immortal slaying stage should be given to the demon race. After saying that, the immortal god frantically winked at Si Hanhai. However, Si Hanhai turned a blind eye to it. Hearing this, Qin Shujian could not help but ask, "What does West Spirit Emperor think?" "I have no objections. Since the human race wants the deity position of the immortal slaying stage, then give it to the human race." Si Hanhai shook his head, looking indifferent. In this regard, the immortal god who spoke up for him was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The typical emperor was not anxious, but the eunuch was. Up until now, the demon race only had one deity position in the heavenly court. So it was all because of a salted fish like you. Anyone with ambition should fight for the deity position now. The immortal god who spoke thought of everything, but he did not expect Si Han Hai to be so salted. The deity position that was delivered to his door did not have any intention of fighting for it. Hearing this, Qin Shu Jian did not force him. He nodded and said, since West's Spirit Emperor has no intention of fighting for the deity position, then this deity position will be bestowed to the human race's Dan Hao. Thank you, Emperor of Heaven. Shi Yang's face revealed a look of joy. Send a message to Dan Hao in 7 days. I will confer the deity position to him. Your Majesty. Chapter 8:28. The deity position of the immortal slaying stage fell into the hands of the humans just like that. When the immortals and gods of all races saw this, they had the urge to beat their chests and sigh. With the addition of this deity position, the humans had a total of 5 deity positions in the heavenly courts. Compared to the other races, who only had 1 deity position, the difference was huge. If the demons had made a move, they could have broken the possibility of the humans obtaining the 5th deity position. However, Si Han Hai had no intention of competing. Not only did the immortal who spoke not destroy the humans' plan, but he also exposed himself and offended the humans. Speaking of which, it was like trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. Qin Shu Jian said, the deity position of the immortal slaying stage has been established. It was also said before that those who have reached the 3rd realm of the Grandmaster realm in the Tao of array formations, alchemy, and forging can enter the heavenly courts to obtain the deity position. I wonder if there have been any cultivators who have achieved this after so many years? The gods looked at each other and were speechless. 3rd realm grandmasters were not that powerful in the current era, where perfected immortals were everywhere. However, they were not powerful. It was more difficult to produce a 3rd realm grandmaster than to produce a perfected immortal. Until now, not a single cultivator could reach this level. Xiang wanted to say something, but the Xiaohuang glared at him and shut him up. Seeing the silent scene, Qin Shujin shook his head and did not say anything more about this matter. He also knew that the various races did not have much achievements in the 3 Tao. Although the cultivation environment had improved a lot, the cultivation of the 3 Tao was not based on the cultivation environment. It was extremely difficult to produce a 3rd realm grandmaster without a solid foundation. From the looks of it, the ones most likely to obtain these deity positions should be the human race. However, the humans did not say anything. Then Qin Shu Jian understood that the humans had not produced a 3rd realm grandmaster. However, according to his understanding of the human race, a few years had passed. Even if the humans had not produced a 3rd realm grandmaster, it would be soon. Hand over the stars and star cores that I asked you to collect now, Qin Shu Jian said slowly, indicating that the court session was coming to an end. Everything that needed to be said had been said. It had been a few years since the last time the star core was handed over to him. He believed that every immortal and god should have a lot of them. Zhou Tian didn't have enough star nuclei to refine the star map, so this matter couldn't be delayed any longer. The deities heard this. Immediately, he handed over all the star cores he had collected. Seeing the star cores flying over, Qin Shu Jian waved his hand and collected a portion of them into the investiture of the gods. After the investiture of the gods had reached its limit, he then used the imperial insignia to forcibly expand the capacity of the investiture of the gods. Only then was he able to take in all the remaining star cores. Qin Shu Jian only roughly sensed it, and a smile appeared on his face. Over 400 stars. More than 200 star cores. This kind of harvest was much more than he had expected. However, Qin Shu Jian's smile disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Continue to recruit heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals. Train the existing heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals strictly. Increase the strength of the myriad races as much as possible. Also, find a location of the 3 major clans. 1 year later, the heavenly court will officially declare war on them. That's all I have to say. Court session is dismissed. Qin Shu Jian's words were powerful. After he finished speaking, He ignored the deities of the heavenly court and directly disappeared from the throne. After he left, only then did the remaining deities leave one after another. The war would start in a year. This news was not too surprising to them, because a few years ago, the deities already knew that the heavenly court was going to war with the three major clans. Now that they calculated the time, about 3 to 4 years had passed. If it was another year, it would be about the same as the deadline Qin Shujian originally gave. It was only logical that the war would start. In addition, the strength of the various races was increasing rapidly. If they really wanted to go to war, they were very confident that they could win. Since they were confident that they could win, then the war would start. Compared to the war with the three major clans, some immortals were more concerned about what had happened in the court meeting just now. Some immortals took a deep look at Shi Yang and the others. They turned around and left. There were also some with smiles on their faces and cupped their hands to congratulate them. Congratulations to the human race for adding another deity position. Congratulations. These immortals had smiles on their faces. It was impossible to tell if they were real or fake. To this, Emperor Zhao also smiled faintly and nodded. Xiang cupped his hands in return. Not long after, the immortals left one after another. Only Xiang and the others were left in the inner hall of the heavenly palace. All of them are hiding knives behind their smiles. If they really have the chance to stab the human race, they will definitely not show mercy. The smile on Shi Yang's face disappeared and became gloomy. Emperor Zhao's expression was calm. The human race has too many deity positions in the heavenly court. It's normal for them to have ideas. Go back and tell Su Zhan and the others to cultivate well. Don't expose yourself without permission. Father, are you worried that someone will attack them? It's not impossible. They would dare to do so unless they don't want to live anymore. Shi Yang's face was filled with anger as he shouted coldly. Now that the human race was at its peak, who would dare to attack the human race easily? Moreover, now that the heavenly law had been set, it was also a violation of the heavenly law to stir up strife between the various races. The Emperor of Heaven would definitely not stand by and do nothing. Emperor Zhao shook his head with a faint smile on his face. You underestimate them too much. Compared to the human race having a few more deity positions, sacrificing a few people is nothing. We don't have any concrete evidence, and we have nothing to say. When the time comes and we really succeed, we can casually push out a scapegoat, and this matter will be settled. The great calamity is imminent. The Emperor of Heaven will not let the myriad races fall into chaos. There are some things that you have to prepare for a rainy day. You can't let your guard down. After hearing Emperor Zhao's warning, the anger on Shi Yang's face subsided a little. Then he nodded and replied, Father, you're right. I know what to do. With that, he looked puzzled again. Speaking of which, Emperor Xiling also has a deity position in his hands. Why didn't he compete with the human race? In the end, the demon race's foundation is too shallow. Even if they have an additional deity position, it won't be of much use. Emperor Xiling also doesn't want to fall out with the human race because of this. After all, the demon race and the human race can be considered allies. Emperor Zhao glanced at him and then explained. What the demon race needs now is to recuperate and slowly develop. They don't need to stand on the cusp of the storm and compete with the various races. Moreover, he took the initiative to give up the fight for the deity position this time. The human race also owes him a favor. With this favor, if the demon race has any trouble in the future, the human race will have to lend a hand. They want to push the demon race out to fight against the human race. Unfortunately, Emperor Xiling is not a fool. How could he be willing to be this knife? Xiang nodded in agreement. Then, they left the inner hall of the Heavenly Palace. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.